Hi, I'm Nova. This is my selection of 2025 music, and I'm going to present it to you in the order of how much it emotionally affected me. 2025 may have been the year with the most music that had the most impact on me that I have yet experienced in my life as a 34-year-old, coming off the heels of 2024, which held that record previously. So I'm not going to make this intro too long. We've got a lot of music to get through. And if there's only one album you end up listening to because of this video, I sincerely hope that it is Country by Cleo Reed. My shorthand for describing this album to people has been, imagine if an album that sounds like Björk doing her own version of Cowboy Carter with no budget. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, well, it wouldn't, because nothing that sounds like that's ever existed. But once you hear it, if you get all those references, you might understand what I mean. The first track on this album, Salt and Lime, is like 7 minutes long and has lived in my head rent-free since hearing it for the first time. These hypnotic, sleepy riffs that sound like gazing over a cornfield from the side of a car, watching life drift by and just soaking in Americana, is the essence of this album. This album is the most American album maybe I've ever heard. And by that, I don't mean that it's celebrating America. I mean that it is exactly reflective of the current state of things in America. And for me, as somebody who's been traveling a lot, especially in the last 5 years, specifically just across the United States, and I've gone around the country over and over again. I had a job in 2023 that involved mostly driving between different cities all over the country. And most of what my partner and I were doing when we would stop in all of these different cities outside of work is go to breweries and spend a lot of money on beer. And the hip current trend in beer, in mainstream modern beer, is salt and lime, because if you have standard lager and you cut it with salt and lime, it just tastes better. And so almost anywhere you go, you could get a salt and lime lager of some version, even if it's just literally adding salt and lime into a Budweiser. So when the first lyrics on this album are, "The grass ain't greener and the fare ain't cheap. Give me salt and lime in the land of the free. Haze in the air, make it harder to breathe." I thought, oh my God, you just encapsulated the entire experience of living in the United States inside of 3 lyrics. And then she bridges from that into singing, "I'm always good at living my life out of sequence," which is maybe the lyric that I relate to and have thought about the most since hearing this album. So yeah, this is literally just coming up and hitting me right where I'm at in a way that I don't get a lot with music. There's not a lot of music that actually talks about what I feel like are relatable experiences for me. I don't want to belabor talking about Salt and Lime too much. It's a phenomenal song. It goes through all these different movements and directions. It's got this long kind of dissociative hazy part where she keeps repeating "haze in the air, getting harder to breathe," and the "I can't breathe" symbolism, I think, is pretty obvious to anybody who understands what that means in modern America, but also the fact that there's just the smog choking the air, and I can't help but imagine, I just see the cornfields that I've been seeing since the start of the song as this thick cloud, this miasma rolls in over it all and just kills all the crops, that's the way I imagine this ending part of the song. And then you go from that into "I've been out here hustling," which I can only describe as sounding like a slave song made out of the phrase "I've been out here hustling." And I say that unreservedly because what this album is about being working class and feeling like you really don't have that much availability to what you can do, despite the fact that America is supposed to be this land of freedom. And ultimately, there's just not that much to the human experience. What you will learn when you travel is that things aren't that different anywhere. There's only so many things that we've really figured out how to do or that mean anything to the human experience. And so we find ourselves trading back and forth these couple of things that are meaningful to us, art for alcohol or food or what have you. And so this album, it sits on that fringe of experience where you don't have all this excess and glamour to throw at like getting the fanciest clothes or the most expensive food or going to every single place. Like when you have a lot of money, you can do a lot of different versions of the same thing. And there's a certain glamour in this feeling of always seeing something a little bit different all the time, but it really kind of boils down to the same basic experience. And when you don't have a lot of money, then it is tremendously more repetitive because you can only really afford to always get the cheapest thing on the menu. You can only really afford to barely get your foot in the door of a place if you are actually trying to get out of your house. You know, for the most part, it's usually better to just stay at home and to just, you know, keep to yourself because it's affordable, as opposed to, you know, trying to do literally anything. And so you find yourself trading your passions for the rations at the local bar, as was sung on Salt and Lime, and I skipped that lyric, but I've Been Out Here Hustling is like the next even more like soul-grabbing, like tragic, like feeling of just being worn out and soul-tired from hustling so hard. And that goes right into Women at War. And Women at War is the jam of the album. It is undoubtedly the catchy single. And it's also very in the moment. Like, we are in a cultural shift where women are kind of coming to the forefront and pushing forward culture. And you see this a lot in the hip-hop world where, like, all of the most forward-thinking artists and the people who are really creating any kind of buzz, you know, getting people talking, are the women like Doechii and Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, Glorilla. Speaking personally, I have a long list of female MCs that I'm a fan of that don't really get talked about that much, like Baby Mother, Cupcake. Actually, I'm going to bring up a bunch of MCs on this list as we go. Just in my personal life, when this album came out, there were women I knew who were at war with one another, so it also felt very appropriate. So going from there, the album just keeps getting more experimental and weird and very dissociative and just blending all these different styles of like psychedelia and folk and Americana, and there's a song even called Americana, which is very, very memorable. And a lot of the songs they don't have like a complete song structure. They feel like kind of just an exploration of a specific idea and a mood, and then they kind of move into the next song. And so I do feel there are certain songs on here that don't stand out as much on their own. Like, I wouldn't probably listen to them just casually, but that in the course of the album add to the statement and add to the overall feel and just the weirdness, the sonic experimentation that doesn't feel like really anything else other than, like, again, maybe if somehow Björk made Cowboy Carter in Brooklyn with no money. But the midpoint song on this album, maybe a little less than halfway through, but it is the absolute barn burner, the song that defines this album for me, the one that has made me cry many, many times. Always the Horse, Never the Jockey. This song is absolutely incredible. It makes me weep. I woke up in spite of fear. I didn't ask to be here. I mean, I don't think anything captures my particular feelings of anxiety and fear and, you know, and better than that. Of like, it typically starts in my dreams. I'm not a person who has good dreams. So it's like I woke up in spite of the fact that what I'm processing is nightmarish, and that I didn't ask to really be on this earth. I just happened to be here. And then the lyrics go into basically from the perspective of a racehorse that is pleading to be treated well. And it is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard. Can you blame me for existing? Can you blame me for resisting? The way that she sings these lyrics in the hook, I would sing it, but I would start crying, and then I wouldn't be able to keep recording. So, this is one that, I have this in my best singles of the year playlist, which I'll put in the description as well. It's 30 songs that I could listen to endlessly. And I have listened to this playlist like hundreds of times. So these are very battle tested songs. And I don't always listen to every single song on the playlist because I'm not always in the right emotional mood to start crying while I'm driving. And this song has done that to me a few times. So do be careful where you listen to this song. But Always the Horse, Never the Jockey is just phenomenal through and through, an incredibly deep, cutting experience. It's got a funny, witty edge to it in that it is about being a racehorse, but the way it's presented is just so heartbreaking that the funniness just makes it feel even more like kind of pathetic and sad, and it's just like, oh man, this is how it feels living under capitalism, is this song exactly. It couldn't have been captured better. After that point, the album gets even more experimental, and the song that is actually the reason that I heard this whole album is Strike. And the reason that I heard Strike is that my friend Tanya from the Golden Butterflies Discord was, I guess, pushed it algorithmically because of the Billy Woods feature. And we had been running Billy Woods' album into the ground, so we're going to get to that, don't you worry. But Billy Woods does a verse on this song, and the way that it's performed, it's like the song comes in with these weird off-kilter, off-key, like distant singing hums from Cleo that are kind of in the background, and then this bizarre beat, and Billy Woods is doing a flow I've never heard before. But even better than that, Cleo is singing over him, and like more and more of her voice doubled over, like singing the lyrics that he's rapping, and it just sounds so trippy. And also exactly like something I would want to make. Like, I was listening to it like, wow, this is something, this is an idea I would want to do, and like, I can't believe I haven't. What a good idea this is, to have a collaborator and then sing over the collaborator in this, like, what a great idea and song. And it's so trippy and weird. And so as soon as I heard that song, I thought, well, I need to hear the rest of this album. And I was completely taken aback by what I actually got, because it's not a rap album mostly. It is a hip-hop album, question mark. It's been described that way by Cleo, so I'm going with it. But it's also everything. It's every type of American music. I really do think it is a total summary of what American music is. The United States of American music, I mean. I should not say all of American, because there's a lot of stuff that's called America depending on who you ask. But the United States has a lot of forms of music, all invented by black people, and all present on this album, reclaimed under one flag, which is also being burned on the cover. So yeah, it is the most American thing I've ever seen. The only reason that I would ever be proud to be from this country is because it gave us country. Okay, the next album on my list is another one that hit me exactly where I happened to be at in an unexpected way, and that's Cabin in the Sky by De La Soul. And I gotta front load this by saying that I had not really listened to a De La Soul project before this. I knew De La Soul almost exclusively for Feel Good Inc. by Gorillaz, which is a song I grew up with, but because Gorillaz never fucking credited the rappers on their first two albums, I had no idea who they were until much later. But it just so happens that I have been, as a project, for like 6 months now, I've been listening to specifically MCs who are over 50 and music that they have released since being 50. And I know that a lot of people have been kind of doing that in a sense because of the Legend Has It series, which is Nas, who turned 50 just a couple years ago, putting out a bunch of albums such as this one from older MCs. I think most people would be really surprised to realize how many rappers are over 50 and releasing albums, because it is more than 100, maybe more than 200, depending on how many you're how far you're going to go into the reaches of the internet to find these guys. But like, there is a lot of rappers who are over 50 who are doing great rap music, including the Clips, who we're going to get to, and they are themselves over 50. And there's been a lot of conversation about the fact that Malice is 52 and putting out some of the very best rap music in existence right now this year. And so there are a lot of rappers who are featured on this new De La Soul album that I wasn't especially familiar with. I'd maybe heard a couple of their songs before this year, but it just so happened that I had caught up on a lot of these guys' discography, or at least the stuff they've been doing recently, right before hearing this album. So when they're going down the list of names, and at the start, it's Giancarlo Esposito, whose voice is incredible, and he's reading off the names of everyone that's on the album for like 3 minutes. It is surprising how entertaining it is for this whole 3 minutes. And you're just hearing names like Black Thought and Slick Rick. And as it's coming together, producers, everybody, I'm just like, wow, this is like a lot of people I just started thinking were maybe the greatest rappers of all time. Nas is on here, like, oh shit, I was just thinking about how Nas and Black Thought are like basically the only people competing with Malice who are exactly his age. And here they both are with a bunch of other guys their age that I'm about to discover are also competing in that category of who is the best rapper over 50. So on my first listen, what blew me away was not just the feature list, the fact that all of the bars are so good, and it's a good life advice album. It's a album that you can play for someone at any age, really, and they're going to be told something they need to hear. And I think a lot of people are going to take it for granted because maybe they feel that a lot of music gives that kind of stuff, but I feel like when I listen to hip hop, there is a lot of mixed messaging where, especially with older guys, they simultaneously still want to seem, really cool and edgy and hip hop, but they also want to be, unk, and they want to give you advice, and they want to live up to the fact that they are old now. And I respect the most rappers like Nas and Black Thought and Malice, who are going out of their way to speak to you from a perspective of here's how to stop doing street stuff and live wisely and live to be this age. Here's advice that's going to get you this far. And in the case of Cabin in the Sky, it's De La Soul after losing one of their 3 members. And in the world of hip hop, the life expectancy is lower than other jobs, just flat out. A lot of rappers die at 20. A lot of rappers die at 50. And when I've been putting together this list of great rappers over 50, there's always going to be a sense of who they lost, who did not make it to 50 that was a part of this rapper's life. When you're listening to Bun B, Pimp C is not there anymore. So Like, there's always that sense of the gravity of who's gone. And this album is entirely dedicated to that. It is entirely dedicated to the fact that this was a three-piece act that has no meaning without all three members. And so, whether this is the last album or not, it is the only way that they could continue is to continue having Dave in the album, in the music, as much as he ever was, even if it can only be in spirit sometimes, you know? But that spirit is always there, both because he was a producer and rapper. So you've got his beats and you've got his vocals and you've got, you know, quotes and stuff, and like the fact that he's being referenced all the time by everyone else on the album, and also through the concepts that are used on the album. You know, sometimes the songs are about him even when they're not literally about him. They're, you know, they're clearly about him. It's an incredible dedication, but more than that, like, again, on my first listen, it was just like, the beats are so good. Like, it's just unbelievably good beats. And I was like trying my hardest not to start rapping over what, like, I'm trying to listen to what's being said, and I'm like, these are beats I would dream of. Like, these are the beats that I have. Like, You Don't Stop has a beat that like feels like it was pulled out of my imagination of what a good beat should sound like. You know, Sunny Storms, unbelievable beat flip. Will Be is just so much fun. It is fun in a gem form, you know, crystallized. The Package is another one of those beats that's like, it didn't necessarily click with me all the way the first time I heard it, because this was the single that came out beforehand, and I remember hearing it and just being like, yeah, that's a really good song, you know. And then I heard it again and again, and then by the time it got to where I'm hearing it on the album, I'm like, this song is fucking god tier. Like, this beat is unbelievable. I want this beat plays in my head all day now, you know. It's just like this rainy, gorgeous, just awesome cloudy beat that I love so much. And then A Quick 16 for Mama is the perfect use of Killer Mike as a feature. And I just, the theatrical nature of this album is what makes it so good for me, that it's always doing something. There's always something new happening that makes it feel different from any other album, and all of it is so intentful and well done, well crafted. You know, like, there's lots of albums that do little gimmick, like a West Side Gun album, for instance, and there's a few West Side Gun albums this year, and I listened to them all, and I thought they were all good in places, but I feel like West Side Gun does the bare minimum level of, like, he talks about it as, oh, I'm a curator, you know, and he's curating this experience, and like, there is something to that that's interesting and makes the music more fun. But again, to me, as somebody who also, you know, curates albums, I kind of feel like it's the least you could do, you know, compared to what like a Kendrick Lamar is doing with the experience of listening to his album, or what's happening here. I mean, this is unmatched to me. Like, Cabin in the Sky is a new level of bringing the theatrics in, addressing the artifice of the experience, addressing the fact that you are listening to an album, but also it's a stage play, also it's a radio show, also it's a movie, also it's an obituary, you know, like, it's so many things in one, and it executes all of it flawlessly. And it's going to take a long time for people to unpack this album. Like, people are talking about it like it's, you know, oh yeah, De La Soul also released a really great album, but like, I don't think it has settled in with people, because I don't think everybody was at the exact moment of needing this that I was at, you know, of like being excited for specifically this. That is going to reach more people when they're in the headspace that this album is about, you know. And I think as we go through this, you'll discover why it resonates with me. Is I want to bring up that I heard Torre, who is like a huge De La Soul fan, you know, his favorite album is De La Soul is Dead. and he described this album as very sad. And I understand why he feels that way, especially as a De La Soul fan who's, this album is mourning the death of one of its members. But when he said that, it was an odd feeling to me, because I think it's a really uplifting album. Like, compared to most of what I listen to, compared to almost anything else on this list, this is the most upbeat, jolly, full of the verve of life. I think Professor Sky, brought up this French phrase, the love of life. I don't remember how you say it in French, but that was what he was talking about this album having, and that's exactly what I got out of it. It's just this overwhelming love of life that goes beyond death, that, that even when your friend is dead, you have so much love for them that it overwhelms and it just pours out, and that just, Cruel Summers bring fire life. Oh my god. Like, the verve of life in a song like that, when the beat just explodes and rips open and becomes one of the most incredible things I've ever heard. And maybe Toure is rating the album more just based on like the rap quality, how it compares to rapping on other albums. But for me, it's the sonic experience of this is so particular and unique, where it's old school, it's familiar, but it's also radically different and radically new. And the noises on this song, I just don't think I've heard. It's kind of like a siren, I guess, but it's like a new sound that sounds amazing. And that's the kind of stuff that really grabs me on this album, on top of it having a song like Run It Back, where it's just, back and forth with Nas going absolutely to the fullest extreme of how well can we rap. And then you've got NF, where there's a lot of interesting like advice and story and history songs on this album. This is what I would categorize that into, of like philosophy. It's philosophizing about words and the words we use in hip hop and what they mean when they are used by different people, and kind of breaking down all these different angles through which certain words are approached. And then we start getting into the really emotional stuff with Cabin in the Sky, and, really mourning Dave, and songs about like how rare it is to even find a man who is good, and then you're going to lose him anyways, But the real cherry on top, the finisher, Don't Push Me, which is really just a Dave solo joint, kind of, that's been modified to fit the album and to send his spirit to heaven. Tremendously emotional experience of a song, possibly the best beat I've ever heard. Like a beat that will live on forever, a beat that is perfect. The verse is fun, it's exciting, but mostly it's the hook. The fact that he found a way to interpolate Don't Push Me because I'm close to the edge, which is one of those really old school hip hop hooks, but he transforms it into singing in a way it's hard to describe. It's like off time in a good way, and just so memorable, and it's stuck in my head, and it's a very uplifting take on that feeling, because the emphasis is on I'm trying, and at the very end it keeps repeating I'm trying, don't push me because I'm close to the edge, I'm trying not to lose my head, but like really emphasis on like I'm really trying, like please like acknowledge that I am, I'm putting an effort in. Like, it's not as aggressive, it's more like pleading, but in like an epic way, in like a I don't know, it just makes the scope of the statement feel so broad. And the way the song ends, it leaves you wanting more. Like, every time I hear it, I'm surprised it's already over. And I think the symbolism of that is really powerful, too. It literally leaves you like, no, Dave, don't go. Like, I wasn't done. Oh, God, I'm going to start crying. Yeah, that's why this is right behind country, because I can't even talk. I really tried to not talk about country in a way that would make me cry. I let myself get tricked with Cabin in the Sky. All right, the next one I got to talk about is one that you would more likely expect to see in one of these lists because it's been in every single other list of best albums of the year. It's Clip's Let God Sort 'Em Out, and I have to preface this by saying I'm from Virginia, where ain't shit to do but cook. I mentioned it already, but I grew up mostly in Virginia Beach, and I did not grow up with any awareness of Clips or Pusha T really at all. Although, after getting into them and going back and hearing When the Last Time was one of those like, holy shit, why do I know this song moments? Like, I must have heard it. It must have been on TRL enough for me to learn the hook because I immediately clicked it and knew it as soon as I heard that song. But I was like, wow, I couldn't have heard this song since it came out. So I did not stay on the Clips. And the reason is that I was a good kid. Even though I was from Virginia Beach, I was not from the hood, and I did not hang out with hood people. What my friends in Virginia Beach were into, because of being from the area, is Missy Elliott. And I loved Missy Elliott. I loved her music videos. I loved her whole style, particularly Get Your Freak On and Work It were both like, fully implanted into my brain type songs. So I always knew about us having Missy Elliott and Timbaland. I did not know about us having Pusha T and Malice until much later. And when I first heard Pusha T was through Ye. And my impression was, oh, well, this guy just raps about like being terrible to women and selling coke. So I don't really relate to those things. But then when that song came out, Neck and Wrist, where it's him and Jay-Z and Pharrell, that song finally clicked with me, in part because I was old enough to really understand my upbringing in a new lens. Because while I might have been a good kid, my dad was a car salesman, and a really good car salesman in Virginia Beach. That's the reason that we didn't live in the ghetto. We started there, but my dad was really good at selling cars, and he got us out of that situation. And car sales in the 90s were entirely fueled by cocaine. So when I listen to Pharrell talk about being the first in the beach with the $1 million auto, and I listen to the full context of what he's saying in that song, when he says something like, I promise you the floor plan is nothing like the model, I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about now. Like, I am old enough to know, oh, this is Virginia Beach. Like, this is where I come from in a nutshell, is what these guys are saying on this song. And, like, the fact that it even like opens with like Game of Thrones bars is like, oh yeah, this is my parents, and like this is that generation's whole vibe, and this is what they're about. So when we got to the build up to Clips is coming back, they've got a new album coming. I found this out last year because the album was supposed to come out last year. You've all heard the story of why that didn't happen because of the crazy rollout. You've also heard everybody talk about the rollout, so I'm not going to tread all the water of going over the Clips album. If you don't know all this, you're not paying attention to culture. Sorry. But I heard that this album was going to come out last year, so I started listening to old Clips albums, and I got really into Lord Willin', and in particular the first Re-Up mixtape, which if you have not heard it, I cannot recommend enough. It's on YouTube. Just go look up the Re-Up Gang Volume 1. We got it for cheap. So I was pretty hype about the fact that this Clips album was coming, and they only released one single before the album, which was Ace Trumpets. And I think that was an incredibly daring single because it was one of those that like the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, okay, that was like a cool song. Like I didn't really process it, and I wasn't in love with the beat. Like it wasn't a turn up type song. It was kind of a like lay back and do coke kind of a vibe. So I was like, it's not really my vibe, but I kept listening to it because it was the only song they had put out before the album, and eventually I start catching on to just how fucking good the lyrics are, and how good the flow is, and how interesting the imagery is, and people kept breaking down the song and making analysis out of it and getting me even deeper into thinking about it and realizing like there's nothing else really like this. Like, in spite of the way that they have kind of a classic flow, if you really pay attention to the way they structure their lyrics, I don't think anybody else really raps like the Clips. And yes, I'm willing to call them the Clips sometimes because Pusha T said he makes the same mistake. So when the album actually dropped, it opens with Birds Don't Sing, and immediately this is like an emotionally devastating song about losing both of their parents in relatively close together. It reminded me of the book A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, which is also about a guy who lost both of his parents one after another, although he was a lot younger when it happened. And it's really interesting to hear, a pair of fully grown adults like processing that, like losing their parents at kind of an age you would expect to, but at the same time, it's never like an easy thing to deal with. And it's like, this is the most mature handling of that sentiment, maybe, that I've ever heard put to music. I've never heard a couple of 50-year-olds make like a really affecting song about losing their parents in a fashion that is still communicable to like young people, because it's hip hop. Again, it's like it's a young genre that these guys started in when they were young, and are still doing, even though they're not young anymore. And the genre has maintained a kind of, I don't know, it's a feeling of like having your dad still around when he's losing his dad. I remember when my dad's dad died and the way that affected him. And so, I feel like I've been living in fear for a long time of losing my own parents, losing anyone close to me, really, because it's the only consistency I've had in my life. Having moved all the time, like, I don't have a feeling of like, oh, I'm really from this neighborhood or anything like that. I do feel like I'm from Virginia Beach and Norfolk, like I'm from Hampton Roads now, because as an adult, I've been around the area enough to really understand where I grew up and what it's like here and why stuff like this hits with me now. Like this, again, I wouldn't have related to this album when I was young, but now that I have grown up in Virginia Beach and I'm listening to these people who, by the way, don't spend time here, well, I guess Malice, I'm sure, probably spends more time in Virginia Beach than Pusha does, but like, these guys are always traveling because Virginia Beach doesn't have a hip hop scene. They didn't make all their money here. They moved to Philadelphia and formed a group there because that's where they were successful. They had to stay on the move. They had to stay, working with people outside of the area in order to have any success, because there's nothing to do here but cook, like they said on their first album. And that's why this album, despite being very Virginia Beach and very much about Virginia Beach, and all the music videos are shot in Virginia Beach, they're shot by people from New York, and the album was recorded in Paris, and it's all a Louis Vuitton ad and not even a Bape ad. So that level of like the luxuriousness of the album is where I disconnect with it. And it's kind of funny to even have this in the same list as like Country or even Cabin in the Sky. Because while Cabin in the Sky is nowhere near as anti-capitalist as Country is, it's also nowhere near as forwardly capitalist as Let God Sort 'Em Out. But at the same time, this is the most realistic album about what capitalism can actually buy you. And, there's an excessive show of wealth on this album, but it's really because they're describing like every single height that they've reached back to back. Like when you imagine this all happening at once, like it is in the bars, it seems ridiculous. But if you pare it down to individual experiences, each of them is interesting in what they're saying specifically. And it's really about the magnitude of thinking. The point of this album is to expand the magnitude with which you consider the scale of what money could be doing for you. I buy bitches, you buy 'em sections. Buying someone a whole section is a huge show of wealth. Buying a person is a tremendously huger show of wealth. But it's not really wealth in the monetary sense. It's not that a person costs more than a section. It's about how you negotiate. It's about, do you make someone feel like they comfortably can just work for you versus are you trying to show off to this person, just to get laid or whatever. Like, you buy watches, I buy collections. What do you need a collection of watches for? It's not to wear them all. It's because you are a business person. You are going to sell those other watches. You're not wearing the one watch in the collection for the sake of wearing that watch. You're wearing it for the sake of advertising the other watches in the collection that you are also selling. This is the kind of game he's trying to put you on. If you want to run with us, then your credit score got to be FICO. I'm talking 850 or bust. Do you know how aspirational an 850 credit score is for most people? Like, they straight up priced out their audience. And it's a come up and get me in a financial sense of a statement, right? They're basically saying, hey, you have two options. You can either make more money than us, which we know you're not going to do, or you can out-rap us, which we know you're not going to do. And so, if you're going to get in our way, then we're going to make sure everyone knows that you're doing that. And a lot of this album is calling other people out, preparing for war and going to war. But then there's also the sentimental side and the here's what we're protecting, right? All Things Considered is the real emotional core of this album. And the Pusha T verse at the start, I mean, so you already know their parents are dead, and he starts off the song saying, my mother's cheek, I miss it, I want to kiss it. And I think he mentioned in Birds Don't Sing as well, he was happy that his son had gotten to meet his mother, but was upset that he won't remember her because he's too young. And then in All Things Considered, he talks about how his son wants a younger sibling. And so they had tried, and then his wife miscarried, and they hid it from their son and just started up on another attempt, And he mentions how incredibly expensive it is to even attempt to have a baby. But because he has that kind of money, he can ensure that his stork shows up with the baby in it. So this is a whole different perspective on the wealth thing. It's not just about how much can I live a great life for myself. It's how much can I make things better for my family. My kid wants a brother, and it's fucking emotionally and financially difficult to make that happen, but he's determined. And again, there is real advice on this album. There's real perspective. There's real adult stuff happening here that makes it exciting for me, way beyond all the coke rap and all that stuff. And I'll remind everyone as well that while Pusha T's perspective and his character is unrepentant and he's the warrior who's going to go out and get it, Malice is mostly the exact opposite. His whole character is repentance. His whole character is regret for all of the bad things he's done, and a sense of trying to keep you away from doing anything that he's been doing. This is a place for me, it's not really a place for you, is the messaging of his music. So I don't really think it's an irresponsible album. It talks about irresponsible things, but it's not trying to tell you to be like them. What it's trying to tell you is to recognize whether or not you actually have the capacity to be like them before you insert yourself into a conversation with them. And I think it is aspirational, but it's also kind of a reminder that this is not something that you can get just by this is not something you can get without real effort and real coordinated attempting to be this type of person. If you are not out to be actually like this about this life, you are not going to achieve any of this. And I think they just kind of raise the bar for what that is, what you are trying to go for as a rapper. What is the height that you can achieve? I think they made that look higher than it had ever looked in terms of being like a real human, not like a cartoon character. There isn't an aspect of it, again, because you bring it all together, it sounds cartoonish, but individually, everything happening on this album makes sense, and that's what makes it so good and click so much. Okay, so those were the big three. Those were like the ones that I really had to debate with myself, because country had the most profound effect on me. Cabin in the Sky had the most like consistent, like, I've feeling that, oh, I'll be listening to this for the rest of my life. Like the first time I heard the album, I knew this is an album that's never going to not be in rotation with me. Let God Sort 'Em Out, I always feel like this kind of, there's a bit of a question of like, will all of these songs, like certain songs on there, I think are just going to fall out of rotation. My favorites, Birds Don't Sing, Chains and Whips, So Be It, Ace Trumpets, Mike Tyson, Blow to the Face, and of course the number one, FICO. I've listened to FICO a billion times. The Stove God Cooks hook is unbelievable. It was my first exposure to Stove God Cooks. Now I've got a bunch of his hooks stuck in my head forever, but he's got the best voice. He's just got the best voice. Stove God Cooks has the best fucking voice in hip hop. But yeah, he's amazing on this song. The whole song's incredible. Again, I've listened to those songs I just named. I've listened to considerably more than the rest of the album. And so, like, all of them are just great songs, great bangers. None of them are like a personal, deep resonance of like, oh, this is my life, the way that country is, or the way that Cabin in the Sky feels like it's really preparing me for becoming, old. Like, Let God Sort 'Em Out is like a best case scenario of like a dream world of, if you were the most intense version of yourself, who could you maybe be? But Cabin in the Sky is like, here's who you actually are, and country is like, here's who you actually are right now, not 15 years from now. Professor Sky had proposed this idea of comparing his top 3 albums of the year to the TRIFORCE: Courage, Wisdom, and Power. And I think for my 3, they fit perfectly, where obviously Power is Let God Sort 'Em Out, Wisdom is Cabin in the Sky, and Courage is Country. So that's my TRIFORCE, my trifecta of the best albums of the year. Country is ultimately the one that I love the most, but Cabin in the Sky is the one that I see myself listening to the most, the longest into the future, at least the songs that I really like on it. And Let God Sort 'Em Out is the one that had the most like uncontestable cultural impact, in terms of like everyone who loves hip hop like had a hard time not loving this. I've heard a couple people who don't love it. Open Mike Eagle doesn't love it, and I completely understand why. And it's the same reasons that I don't love it as much as country. And I'm surprised that I would even put it above Open Mike Eagle's album, but the only reason is because I am from Virginia Beach and we have nothing. This is it. This is all we have. So from that perspective, this means a lot to me. Now, in terms of what I have personally outside of being from Virginia Beach, that's my segue into talking about the Mars Volta, because the Mars Volta is my favorite band. They have been my favorite band since high school. I kind of credit them with getting me deep into music. Like, I was always into music, but the Mars Volta is what got me on that level of, I'm investigating stuff, I'm learning about their influences, I'm trying to find more stuff that sounds like this, which I never really did, because nothing else really sounds like the Mars Volta, as I would eventually learn. Like, I kind of had taken it for granted that they must belong to a movement that exists out there, and it really wasn't the case. They're pretty singular. But Francis the Mute is like my favorite album of all time. I will eventually put out a lengthy analysis of it. I had recorded one. It was 12 hours. I think I need to redo it and make it shorter. But in any case, the first 4 Mars Volta albums were all really important to me when I was in high school, and then their 5th and 6th albums I was not as into, and then they kind of went defunct. And for a long time, Omar Rodriguez Lopez was just making solo projects, all of which are interesting, and some of them are really good and really memorable. They are just not anything like the Mars Volta. They do not hit the same way. They're not trying to hit the same way. And most of them are more like sort of pared back and experimental, and uh, I I like a lot of them again, but nothing on the level that I really loved those first four Mars Volta albums. Well, there was all kinds of rocky stuff over the years, drama between Cedric and Omar, and then eventually they finally reconnected and they put out a self-titled album a few years ago. And I thought the self-titled was pretty good. I like some of those songs a whole lot, and some of them I think are just okay. And it was a really interesting direction for them to take, because it was essentially a pop album, just like filtered through the way that the Mars Volta makes songs, And it wasn't totally unexpected for me, because I listen to a lot of Omar's stuff, so it felt in line with stuff that they've done on his projects that were not the Mars Volta. It was just, way more stripped down and kind of less conceptual than Mars Volta had ever been. And so while I liked that, it did not really feel like the Mars Volta was back, I have no idea how to pronounce the title of their new album. I'm going to call it Lucro Sucio Los Ojos del Vacío. I hope that wasn't too bad. This is a proper progressive rock album. It feels maybe a little closer to a Pink Floyd, or I don't know, a little bit of like Massive Attack in there, a little bit of trip hop, and like it's way more smoothed out, way more Porcupine Tree than like the kind of freak jazz, insanity that they were up to in their early days. But like in the old days, it is really conceptual. The songs all flow into each other. It's got the weirder bits, the more experimental, the clearly improvisational stuff. It's got, weird little interludes, not all of which I even necessarily love. I'm just happy that they're there, because part of what I love about the Mars Volta is the sense of mystery that comes from listening to their music, where even after literally hundreds, if not thousands of times listening to Francis the Mute, I still discover new things in that album if I listen to it, because it's just that dense. It is unfathomably fucking dense, because they just put everything they could into it. Everything that made sense went in. So that feeling kind of comes back on this album, where it feels like within the tone of what they were doing on this album, they did everything. And it's a really interesting spread of emotions. There are moments that are a little bit quirky that I don't know if totally work for me. The you're the one that I want, that part is still makes me kind of laugh, but I also I think it's a really good song. It's a really tuneful, pretty song. It's just also really cheesy and really 80s feeling. And the whole album definitely has a nostalgic tinge. Like, it sounds older than the band. Like, it sounds older than the age of the band, is what I mean to say, like, in terms of what it's pulling from stylistically, but at the same time using like really new modern techniques. And I can tell also that they've been very concerned about, like, how is this going to play live when we're like, they're old. Like, they're not trying to play the most intense, freaky, crazy shit like they were when they were younger. Like, they're trying to play something a little bit more manageable that's still going to sound good and sound like the Mars Volta. So I think this album does a great job of finding the middle ground of, like, what is a Mars Volta concept album? What is a Mars Volta album if it's not Salsa Slipknot, basically? I have a hard time actually describing, like, sonically what this album sounds like. It's smoky, it's dark, it's introspective, it's kind of epic in places, it's very psychological, and the lyrics are just amazing. I think that I've always loved the Mars Volta lyrics, but historically they didn't really make sense. Like, it was mostly just a bunch of weird sounding phrases and like the craziest word choices imaginable. Over the years, Cedric's lyricism has tightened up considerably, and it was probably my favorite thing about their self-titled album is the lyrics on some of the songs just are gut-wrenchingly fucking hard. This album has amazing lyrics, lots of stuff that will send you right into your feelings or your thoughts, or just communicates way more emotions than, Cedric ever had before, in a much more direct way, but also just like cutting and poetic and brilliant. What festers in your heart when they lost you as a child and you never wanted them to look away? Now the time has come for us to look away. Like, that shit's creepy and cool. Voice in My Knives is that song, which is my favorite off of the album. But Cue the Sun is really good. I love how there's a lot of songs on this where it's kind of a traditional verse, chorus, verse, almost pop song structure, but then it'll break into another track, and the second track will be the more ethereal, weird one, but oftentimes it does kind of form into its own song, and like they are complete songs, just a little bit weirder, so depending on how you want to listen to the album, you can kind of skip past the really weird stuff and just go to the jams, or you can really absorb the full experience of it with all the interludes and everything. The fact that the album calls back in not only on itself but two old albums, it actually like references lyrics from Francis the Mute, like the concept of the famine pulse, and just even the fact that that happened made me have to reopen my Francis the Mute analysis back up and be like, okay, there's more to say now, so yeah, as a Mars Volta fan, this was really satisfying. It's another one that I think I'm going to listen to even more as the years go on. Like it feels timeless. It holds up really well. It's not at all incidental to my current feelings or mood. Like, in the way that Country and Cabin in the Sky were like, this hit me exactly where I'm at. This one did not hit me exactly where I'm at. It hit me where I've always been. It hit me in the Mars Volta, and that's a place that I can always return to. So yeah, having another Mars Volta album to really, really love is a great feeling for me, and I'm very happy to have my favorite, like, to be able to unreservedly say in 2025 that the Mars Volta is still my favorite band, including their current music. That's a good feeling. This next selection is probably going to shock some of you, especially because of the fact that every other end of the year list forgot about this album. But I really want to highlight it because it was pretty special to me, especially early in the year. And nobody else seems to be talking about it anymore, but it's Rebecca Black's Salvation. I found out about this because of Professor Sky's record review, which is a great channel. He recommended this album, and his review is really solid. You could definitely watch that and get a lot of the sort of depth of what's being explored on this. But basically, it's just 7 dance pop bangers that just go harder than fuck. And this album is why I felt almost nothing listening to Mayhem by Lady Gaga, which I've seen like at the top of a bunch of lists, and I've seen it like nominated for Best Album of the Year at the Grammys, and like there's some good songs on there, but in terms of being a modern version of what Lady Gaga sounded like 10 years ago, Salvation is the better album. Salvation sounds like if after Art Pop, the next Lady Gaga album had been like the best dance album I've ever heard. It's 7 songs, it's 20 minutes. I ran this thing into the fucking ground. I'm a big fan of like short albums that I can just listen to over and over again because I tend to change contexts about every 20 minutes or so. Like, I go between rooms, or I might be driving or doing something else, and this album is surprisingly applicable where I might have just played it, 3 times in a row for 3 different situations. Because every song is fun, and it loops back in on itself well. Each song is different enough from the last that it feels like there's just an incredibly strong variety on it. Salvation is like this really bustling, busy, like club song that opens up into these like angelic kind of moments, and it's like this self-affirmation song about being literally your own savior and like it's basically a better version of that Miley Cyrus song. The next one after that is Trust, which is just like a really fucking sexy, hard, dance track. Sugar Water Cyanide then is like the borderline hyper pop, blingy blongy, like pop and lock and down low dance song. The one that is my favorite that I've probably listened to hundreds of times, and it's one of the things about this album that I think makes it so great is Rebecca Black has a way of incorporating herself into the song that feels very natural. And it's something that I feel like most superstars or most people who become popular kind of do it by doing the opposite. Like, um, how do I put it? She's performing like she is the vocal sample being used in a dance song. Like rather than trying to bring the attention to herself, it feels like she is using her voice to highlight what makes these dance songs so good. And the reason that it works is cuz the beats are immaculate. Like it's 7 of, again, just like the best dance beats that I've heard all year, and she complements them all beautifully. And so even though I do think lyrically these songs are really good and they speak to some interesting emotions, especially Salvation, American Doll, which is about, just being like a modern American woman who's looked at through all these particular lenses of like hypersexuality and stuff, and also like through this lens of control. Like you're supposed to be this open, expressive person, but you're also supposed to be this demure, controllable object, like she's drawing that kind of dichotomy. Tears in My Pocket is just a legendary beat. Like she's mostly repeating, baby, you can keep your tears in my pocket over and over again, but it sounds so good on that beat. And then Do You Even Think About Me is one of my favorites because it's like kind of disguised as a breakup song, like Do You Still Think About Me, person who I used to be with, but it's also kind of a meta commentary on the fact that Rebecca Black was like an infamous meme, that she is almost exclusively known for this song Friday that had like billions of views for being like the most famously bad song. And somehow she has from that, risen to actually have a legitimate music career and make good music. But like, this song is referencing this idea that like you hear Rebecca Black's name and all that comes rushing back, even though you haven't been thinking about her, like, and this is kind of her in this background sense. And I don't know, I relate to this a lot as somebody who I have, not only do I live kind of an outsider lifestyle, but also like, I come into contact with lots of random people kind of in passing. And also I had like a kind of a blow up that's been forgotten, like don't people don't think about me in mass, like compared to how many people have heard me, people are not thinking about me. So yeah, I connected with the lyrics on here. The last song, Twist the Knife, just sounds like a really good Lady Gaga song. Like, again, this is just the better version of Mayhem to me. So if you wanted that, you got it here. I had to put this like above the next few albums because I don't know if it had as much of an emotional effect on me on the first listen, but the fact that this was basically all I had for the first few months of the year, like this and still listening to GNX and like Doechie's album from last year, Alligator Bites Never Heal, like there wasn't a lot of new music coming out early in the year that I was tapped into. I moved house. This album came out like right around when I first moved. So as I was like, setting up the house and everything, I was playing this over and over again as I was driving around town and everything like that. So pretty much until Rico Nasty's album came out, and we'll get to that one. But I want to talk about a couple others before that. But yeah, this is the most like front to back, I literally love every single song on it album of the year. There is not a miss on Salvation. Not even a near miss. Ultimately, I decided to talk about Salvation before I Love My Computer because Salvation was more tied to my experience of 2025. But I Love My Computer is the album I expect even more so to be listening to long into the future because the songs on this are just so goddamn tight. And there are so many great songs on this album. In terms of living up to pre-release hype, I Love My Computer might be even higher level than Let God Sort Him Out for me, because with Let God Sort Him Out I was only so hyped because there was only the one song and I didn't know what to expect necessarily, and then it was like a lot better than I expected it could have been. I Love My Computer had iPod Touch, which is a phenomenal single. Ultimately my favorite song off the album in terms of like what could I listen to infinitely. And even before that you had Fuck My Computer. I think that might have even come out last year. And I loved that song to death. I had listened to it relentlessly. I was almost like sick of it by the time the album actually came out because I had listened to it so many times. I'd run it into the ground. But when the album actually dropped and then I heard London Song, I was in love with that. I think All I Am was a pre-release single, also a really solid song. Info Hazard was a single, also a solid song. So yeah, I knew this was going to be a good album, but the fact that it's consistent all the way through, I don't know that I love every song equally necessarily, but all of them are good. Battery Death is great. Sing Good is super emotional. That was the other part I didn't expect, was that like you hear Fuck My Computer and it's like a fun song about the fact that you have a better relationship with your computer than you do with most people, which I could relate to. And iPod Touch is like this awesome, nostalgic, fun bubblegum pop tune with like a driving dance beat behind it. But like the whole of the album is surprisingly emotional about the experience of being like an independent music producer and just like having these songs in your head and not really being that like talented at singing and not really knowing how to play any instruments, but because you learn how to use a computer and learn how to, make sounds with it and get totally immersed in that world, ending up making music that you're really happy with. And like the album sounds fan fucking tastic. So the fact that it's so sincere and kind of like coy and like modest about itself, that like there's a whole song about not being able to sing good and being like really determined to make music regardlessly, and just the whole attitude of it is it's moe actually. It's adorable. It's very anime. um and at the same time you get songs like All at Once that just go harder than fuck. And this is an album that you could pretty much front to back play this at like an EDM show and the crowd's gonna go fucking insane because it again sounds incredible. Every song is turned up, they all flow into each other. It's like the perfect dance album, at least for me. This is everything I could possibly want out of dance music, and I'm not like a huge dance music listener. Like this year, it felt like dance music finally got where I wanted it to be, or something. Like all of a sudden, between Salvation and I Love My Computer and Don't Tap the Glass. So I'm just gonna segue right into talking about Don't Tap the Glass because that also was a huge emotional effect for me, in that it dropped just all of a sudden one morning and I woke up and like first thing I see is this album's out. So I listen to it, I love it. Then I start watching other people react to it, and I got really upset about how much they were underplaying like the gayness of it, because that was a big part of what made it exciting for me, was that this is like Cakes to Killa level raunchy lyrics coming from a mainstream rapper who's like about to win a Grammy, whose last album had all these songs where he's talking about being non-binary, which also largely got ignored. So I really think that Tyler is trying to push the gayness to the forefront, and people are literally acting like it's just not there, like it doesn't mean anything, or like is somehow ignorable. And I'm not surprised that the gayest album has also been the least popular. But Big Poe comes out swinging where he's talking about eating cream pies in the backseat of a car and shit. Like, I think that's in Big Poe. Sugar on My Tongue is the big hit, the undeniable jam from this album. But I think Ring 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 is just as much of an undeniable jam. That's the most like, if it weren't for the existence of Skate from Jid's album, this would be the best Skate song of the year. It would be the unquestionable king of the skating rink, but there is a queen of the skating rink who reigns truly supreme. But my favorite song on Don't Tap the Glass is Don't Tap That Glass / Tweakin'. particularly because of the tweaking part, just goes all the way fucking crazy. But like, this is my energy. Like, the exact energy I have is the don't tap that glass tweak it energy. So like, it was very gratifying. It was one of those like instantaneous moments. Like the first time I heard the song, I was like, oh my god, this is my song. You know, like Tyler did one for me, just for me. And I love the whole like ending of the album kind of trails off of like, you can't really top that energy, so you kind of have to play it cool, like have a cool down period after that. And all those songs are really great too. Everything in this part of the album gets stuck in my head relentlessly, you know. Even when I'm not listening to it, it's still in my brain. Don't You Worry Baby in particular. So yeah, this one is just it's a blast. It is a ton of fun. It has me. I haven't gotten to like hear it in a real context. None of these albums, by the way, have I ever heard in like a club or any kind of context where there's people dancing other than me. These are all dancing by myself albums, mostly in my bathroom. But when Don't Tap the Glass came out, it was in a moment in my life where I was dealing with a lot like of stress from other people in particular. And this album broke something in my mind. Like it I realized that the glass had been tapped when I listened to this album, and I became a monster. And it's a very memorable moment in my year. So, you know, the only reason it doesn't rank even higher is that I just simply love even more songs from the albums I've already talked about. Like, I Love My Computer has more songs that I overall love than Don't Tap the Glass. Salvation is just front to back untouchable. Like, the last song on Don't Tap the Glass, I still like it. Don't get me wrong. I still think this is like a 10 out of 10 album. But the last song is not as strong as the rest of the album, and Salvation is just rock solid all the way through. That's the only reason this list is organized the way it is. All of these had a huge emotional impact on me, and so did the next few that I'm going to talk about as well. This is just the point where, this is the point in the list where I start to have songs that are not necessarily my favorites come up more on these albums, you know, where like there might be a few that I like it, but I'm not saying it's a skip. I'm just saying that, you know, it wouldn't have contributed to the fact that the album is in my top. All right, I promised Billy Woods, and now it's time to give you Billy Woods' Gollywog. This is another album that when it came out, I was completely locked into. The energy and atmosphere of this album is just like unmatched in terms of its grittiness, its surreal, otherworldly creepiness. It is essentially a bunch of horror movie cliches turned into really unsettling beats, and then Billy Woods rapping from a very unique perspective, because on the one hand, a lot of it's like void gazy, broad stuff that hits no matter who you are and is like really interesting, like pragmatic but fucked up, hyper cynical, like dark advice. And then he also gives you the perspective that he's coming from and like his personal history and why he feels this way. And that's where it really sinks in that like Billy Woods is like a guy whose real life is like something that would be written about in books. You know, like his real life is history. It's stuff that matters historically. And so when he talks about other things that matter historically, there's like this certain gravity that comes to it of like he really gets what he's saying, and he overstands things that most people have no idea how to even talk about, you know? And so the imagery on this album is like extra dark. It's just it's on a different level of trauma, a different type of mind break that goes beyond just like what's happened to me and what's happening in my life, but also like how it reflects the state of things and how these cycles perpetuate, and like really analyzing the kind of overhanging thoughts and systems, but again without ever losing that individual perspective on it, without ever losing that like and I'm here in it feeling, that makes it all simultaneously like even scarier, but also like there's something to ground you in it. Like the fact that you yourself exist in this place means that there is something consistent and it's the existence of yourself. Like Billy Woods is in all the songs. So if there's anything for you to kind of grab onto and feel a sense of safety in, it's the fact that Billy's going to be there for you through the album, but he's not going to give you anything easy to hear. So it's an interesting kind of flow that the album has to it of like you're in hell but you're used to being in hell because that's the what Billy's used to. I think Maquiladoras is the outright best song on the album. It's got this feature from Iomac that's just like deliriously fast and fucking wretched, and the way the beat shifts through these different experimental sounds, and Billy goes on this like just fucking gut-wrenching verse about Fanad and the CIA handlers gently pressing him in the desert, and fucking how the only way to survive is through amputation, and like it's some of the darkest stuff that is worth thinking about, that you like should think about, and it is good advice but from a really bleak perspective. um and yeah, the whole album, I guess, is basically that. Great advice from a very bleak perspective. I think individually, a lot of the songs don't hold up as well as they do as a part of the album. Like, if you just casually threw on one of these songs, it's kind of going to be okay, well, that was kind of fucking miserable, like, experience. It's a real disruption in whatever you're doing. But taken as a whole project, if you let yourself immerse in it and be in its headspace, I think it is very powerful, and for me, oddly restful, in a sense that it's like so anxious that it makes my own anxiety feel less. Like it makes me feel almost comforted that this thing is maybe just the fact that Billy seems to be dealing with so much worse and still managing to keep kind of a funny attitude about it. Maybe that's what makes it feel empowering. But I remember this specifically, like listening to this album in moments not when I was like depressed, but when I was anxious about something good. Like that something I think is good is going to happen, and I'm kind of like undermining the hype by listening to Gollywog, like listening to this to put myself in the frame of mind that like things could go as wrong as humanly possible, so just be ready for that. I think that's what this is a good for. It's a good palate cleanse for your whole mentality. It's a good ego killer album for sure. While we are on the subject of experimental progressive art hop, we have to talk about Neighborhood Gods Unlimited by Open Mike Eagle. You might be surprised even that it took me this long to talk about this, considering that I did like a 4.5 hour long video about it, which you can find on this very channel. And the thing about this album is that I do really like it. It's not as much musically to my specific taste as it is conceptually extremely intriguing and relatable to me in specific ways that I wasn't getting from anything else this year. And so this is a time and place album for me in terms of a listening experience. Like, I think I will be listening to this album for the rest of my life. I think it's one of those that it doesn't have... Like, when I say time and place, I don't mean now. I mean, there are specific times and places where this is the album that I'm going to be coming to because I'm in that headspace. But it's not the most common headspace for me. I would really say that if you want to get the sense of my most common headspace, actually just listen to the top singles playlist, because that is kind of a collection of stuff that, again, is enough in line with just how I feel most of the time that I can listen to those songs over and over and over. And from this album, Contraband is on there, and I do feel like I can listen to Contraband an infinite number of times. And even if I wouldn't probably put it in my top 10 favorite songs of the year, it is in my top 30 favorite songs of the year, so again, this is a case of like, I love every song on this album. I just don't necessarily love any of them as much as I love, like, every single song on Salvation. Like, that album, I can listen to relentlessly all the time because it just fits the natural kind of state of how I feel, you know. Whereas Neighborhood Gods Unlimited is like a bunch of little vignettes. It's little moments of life, some of which are individually relatable and some of which really aren't, like the wide leg Michael Jordan Generation X jeans, you know, like I'm literally too young. I'm too young and from the wrong culture. Still love the song. Like, it's an amazing song. It's fun. It's cool to sing along to. But in terms of the meaning of the lyrics, it doesn't connect with me the way that Contraband does, the way that Woke Up Knowing Everything at least halfway does. You know, Rejoinder in particular hits all the way through. Unlimited Skull Voices hits all the way through. You know, Contraband hits most of the way through. My Coworker Clark Kent's Secret Black Box is just a really fun song. But a lot of these are deliberately obscure, are deliberately different, and like something that you wouldn't normally think about, normally wouldn't experience, because it's what Mike thinks about, what Mike experiences. And he doesn't try to be broad the way that most rappers do. He's not trying to bring you the most universal messages, but those things do naturally emerge through describing himself. I just think that he is more personal, more ground level and humane than most rappers, and it also makes him more approachable, which is why it also makes sense that he has a YouTube show. Like, he does this, he does commentary, you know, and he's really good at it, and he has some of the most and best perspective into how to talk about hip-hop as a medium. So, you know, I've been watching more Open Mike Eagle even than I have been listening to his music this year. And that's not to say that I haven't been listening to the music a lot. It's just that I've been watching a lot of Open Mike Eagle. So, you know, I really respect him as an overall dude, but I also do unreservedly love this album. I just haven't listened to it as much as the stuff that I've talked about up until this point, because again, those were all albums that I like ran into the ground. And I did do that with Neighborhood Gods, but only when I was actually talking about it. When I made my video, I listened to it relentlessly. But after that, you know, I've kind of let it sit for a bit. And that's a similar position to where Lethal is by Rico Nasty, where when Lethal came out, I ran this album absolutely into the dirt. And in part, that's because it came out a little bit earlier into the year. This was like early summer. So it was, like I mentioned before, coming off the heels of Salvation being like all I was listening to for a little while. And that and like older music, you know. And like a couple of singles from her. Like Doechii had a couple of singles early this year, and then she went on tour. So, you know, she's kind of disappeared. But like, the couple singles she had was like all the new music that I was listening to. And then finally Rico Nasty came out with Lethal, and like it comes in hot with Who Want It. You've got On the Low, which is like a cute, fun, flirty song. You know, Pink is another cute, fun, flirty song. Very bisexual vibes all across this. Butterfly Kisses. I love the like intro monologue on it. And then when you get to Eat Me is when the album like really shows its true face. Like, because the first few songs are all like fun and cute and flirty. Some of them are more punk rock. I don't all the way love Teeth Sucker. Like, I think the early part of the album is good. It's like fine. It's fun. Fine and fun. But then when you get to Eat Me, halfway through the song, it just explodes and becomes this fucking like huge swinging dick energy anthem. And that's the moment that the album just becomes god tier, because you go right from that into Soul Snatcher, which is the driving fast song of the year. Essentially, it's like a Playboi Carti song, but it's better than any Playboi Carti song. I got frustrated so many times because I would always put this on as my driving song when I was going to pick up weed. And every fucking time I get to the part where she says, "I'm in the fast lane if you wanted to race," would be like right after I got slowed down. Like, and I would be so mad because I knew the lyric was coming and I just wanted to be in the fast lane when that lyric came on. And like 4 different times I got trapped behind somebody like right at the start of the song. So yeah, frustrating, but Soul Snatcher is great. That goes into Grave, which is also great, just keeping up the energy. And then Son of a Gun is the one. Son of a Gun is the barn burner, absolute trap metal banger of the year. It is the best, maybe the best ever. Like, in terms of this, like, rage rap, punk trap sound, like, I thought Pacer by Doechii was kind of like a high watermark for this sound. And Rico is the pioneer of this. So, like, she should have the high watermark, but I really think she raised the bar with Son of a Gun. That is the new best rage rap song of all time. And then Smoke Break is a fucking outright like punk metal song it's very fun. So then, unfortunately, the back end of the album, I'm not as in love with. And that's where we have the Crash Out section. Literally starting with Crash, a song about, like, being emotional and, like, needing somebody to crash into like a wave. Honestly, it grew on me a bit. When I first heard the song, I hated it. Over time, like, the fact that it's kind of catchy, it sticks with you a little bit, but I don't know. It's kind of weak. And then the songs after it are like a little better, but I don't know, nothing quite hits on the back end of the album. It's all okay. The last song is like a sweet mommy song. It's gotten me a little emotional sometimes, like thinking about Rico, like, talking to her kid and everything. But again, the back part of the album is kind of where you might just turn it off. If you're listening to it for driving, like, I tend to get to Smoke Break and then I hear Crash coming on and I'm like, all right, let's move along. But again, I did listen to this album pretty fucking relentlessly up until there was the Clips album and the Open Mike Eagle album and the Cleo Reed album. I think all three came out on like the same day. And so that was when music really got crazy for me this year. And then Don't Tap the Glass eventually became my new go-to, like, throw this on in the car, 20 minutes, let's go album. And then at some point when I had finally built up my 2025 singles playlist enough, that kind of became the new de facto. And we will eventually get to that. Like, I'm talking about albums right now because they all contain a bunch of songs that I love, but I will also talk about singles that I love independently of albums when we get there. So one of the great things about music is that it doesn't go anywhere, right? Like, in the sense that it's still around. As long as someone keeps the files on record somewhere, somehow, you can't get rid of music. It lingers. And so even if a band is like relatively unheard of and undiscovered, or you just personally never came into contact with them, you can still find out about them, years later. They could be dead and you still find out about them and they take on a whole new life with you, And a band that I had never heard of until 2023, but then became one of my favorite bands by the end of that year, is Shiner. And they did not put out an album that year. Their latest one had been in 2020, and that one is pretty good. It's got some really good songs on it. It's got some songs I could kind of take or leave. But mostly they were a 90s post-hardcore grunge era, like, prog-influenced rock band, in the same vein of an At the Drive-In, but less like punky and aggressive and more dissociative and prog. King Crimson being like a very obvious, clear influence. And their second album, Lula Divinia, is like a goddamn near perfect album in terms of that 90s grunge post-hardcore sound. It's got a few of my favorite songs on it, like Christ-Sized Shoes and My Life as a Housewife. Their next album after that, Starless, also has some of my favorite songs on it. I'm not as in love with the mixing on that album, but then the one they did after that, The Egg, is also phenomenal. So they had their first album is also quite good. I just don't love it as much as their next three, but their first four albums were all, like, really good. And then they didn't have a new album for like 19 years or something like that. And then when they finally came back, COVID happened. So, like, they would have been touring and stuff, but, it was just like a total shutdown. So I had no idea, like, when or why there might be another Shiner album. Like, it had been so long, and it had all, like, even when I found them in 2023, it had already been 3 years since their last album, and I had no reason to think another one was on the way. So for a significant amount of like the back end of 2023 and early 2024, I was listening to early Shiner relentlessly. And then they started dropping singles this year, and I was like, oh my god, they're back. And I think Asleep in the Trunk, which is the first song on the album, was also the first single. And it's a solid song. It's cool. It very much sounds like Queens of the Stone Age, but it also sounds like a sound Queens of the Stone Age isn't really doing anymore. So it's kind of like, okay, well that's cool. We got a new Queens of the Stone Age song that's better than the ones they're actually making. They had the song The Alligator, which was also really cool, a little bit more of like a trippy, dissociative, weird song. And then So Far So, which was probably my favorite of the pre-release singles because it's got just like this big, epic, emotional hook on it where he's singing about how if you leave me now, the sky won't fall and the earth won't swallow me whole, which is like a really interesting sentiment that a song doesn't always have. And like, but the way the song sounds is like he's telling you this after a super long time of like, I know we've been together for a long time, but I will be fine. It's like the feel of it. It's a really interesting vibe of a song. And then you've got like much trippier, more dissociative songs like the Mutiny, which is maybe my least favorite on the album. My Mirror Hates Me, which is really good. Endless Summer, which has like this blistering sound to it that's very unique. Lazarus, just a good ass fucking post-hardcore song. And then the last song on the album is the absolute juice, Jackie. It's like their shortest song. It's just catchy as hell. It's moody. It's got great lyrics. It's sad, but also kind of like keeping yourself up, kind of. It's really good. It's definitely giving anime ending theme. Like if this was an anime ED, it would be the best. It would be like my favorite anime ED of all time, maybe. So yeah, perfect closing track. Definitely the best song on the album. And overall, just a really solid release. So I was shocked. This might actually be my favorite Shiner album. Like it's going to take some time to really shake out, and it doesn't have anything that's as immediate as like their early stuff. Like their first couple albums, especially when they had their original drummer who was just going absolutely fucking ape shit all the time, is like a level of energy that you're never going to hear from something else, especially not for these guys now that they're very old and post drugs. But this album is super good, just super super good. It sounds really unique. It's got this kind of like broken, like lanky live sound. Like it definitely does not sound polished at all, even though like the sound quality is really good, but like the performance is deliberately like loose and like fragmented, and everything just kind of feels a little off in a good way. I love it. Love the band, love the album. Very happy to have Shiner back. Very happy to have post-hardcore back in general. Like, I'm going to talk about a couple other post-hardcore releases a little bit later on, but this was easily my favorite. 2025 is the year that I discovered my new favorite singer, which is Iniko. I think that's how you say their name. I heard this voice and immediately ran to the discography to be like, what do they got? And amazingly, Iniko has like probably more like social media releases of like singing existing songs but in original arrangements than they do like actual full like studio songs. The album The Awakening, which I recommend the deluxe version. They both came out this year. The deluxe just appended a few songs on, but they fit the album really well. In terms of deluxe releases, a lot of them piss me off. Or really don't mean much, but this one I actually thought the deluxe was the stronger version of the album, if only by a little bit. And it really was kind of just a collection of songs in the first place. That's probably my biggest knock against this album, is that it was collecting like several years worth of singles, and there's not like a real strong sense of flow across the album. I don't think it's like broken per se, but it again, it feels like a collection of very different songs. Some of them feel like they just would not ordinarily be on the same album as one another if it weren't for the fact that they didn't have a place before. But I think this album just starts off absolutely beautifully. Even the title of the first track, Most Demons Come From Home, lets you know that you're like in for some business, you're in for a little bit of a spiritual journey. But it's not as psychological as you would expect from that title. Although it is very inward facing, I would say that it approaches the self more from the spiritual angle, and also from like the perspective of the self as a node of something larger. And really, it's the breadth of Iniko's language that makes the music so appealing and attractive to me, that it speaks to ancestry, it speaks to something, even beyond human, something eternal. And it doesn't speak about it through any specific religious lens. It's more like a generalized spirituality that is felt and understood through the body, kind of similar to the lyrics of Tool songs, now that I think about it. Like, if you've ever listened to Parabola by Tool, like the messages of that song are more or less at the heart of a lot of what Iniko sings about. I would definitely call this a self-affirmations anthem album. The King's Affirmation, literally the name of one of the first songs. And at that point, I also want to address the importance of the gender fluidity of Iniko's singing. That Iniko, is very insistent about not being labeled by gender, not being labeled by, not letting like the present tense way that people view themselves affect the way that they view themselves. Like, Iniko is looking at it like, this is my body, it's not male or female, it's just my body. It is a godly being in and of itself. There's also a song on here called God Body. I would describe, like, if I had to put a genre on this album, I call it body music. And like, ultimately it's kind of pop songs, I guess, like world tinged singer songwriter pop music. I don't really know. I don't listen to a lot of music that sounds like this. Like, this is not ordinarily my genre, because there's not a lot of singers who not only have an amazing voice, but also actually sing about stuff that I connect with, stuff that I personally feel, and I hope it's come through me talking about all these albums, that messaging is a big part of what I come to music for. Like, I want it to sound incredible, but I also want it to speak to me personally, and I want it to have something to advise me, to help me through. Not even that I'm necessarily looking for that, as just that when it happens, that's when I really appreciate something and when I'm likely to keep coming back to it. So this was one of those experiences of like, this is a type of music, really a handful of types of music that I don't ordinarily engage with that much, but because it happened to hit in that messaging way, it really hit hard with me. Icarus is my favorite song from it. It's the perennial pop song, the three hooks in it, and I still don't get tired of listening to it. It just sounds so good. It's such an addicting hook. I would start singing it, but I can't do justice to the voice, and I don't want you to hear me sing it first. Invasion is another super addicting hook. It's probably my second favorite on the album. I love Jericho. Eden. Speak to Me is, oh my god, so syrupy and addicting. It's like a sod song, basically, but a little bit more like modern sounding. And again, Iniko's voice is totally distinct. I mean, not that Sod's isn't. Hers is also totally distinct, but like, this is just a different, distinct voice. But musically, it resembles that kind of syrupy 90s R&B. And then The King's Return on the deluxe version is like this awesome flip on the King's Affirmation that definitely means more when you hear King's Affirmation first. But yeah, all around, a lot of strong songs on here. If it wasn't quite such a hodgepodge, there's a couple songs I kind of find myself skipping a lot of the time. Sometimes the songs just feel out of place. Again, there's a song called 3 a.m. that sounds like a Miley Cyrus song. It literally just sounds like it just sounds like a Miley Cyrus song, and it is not bad at all. it's just super out of place on the album, and it's like track 4 or 5. So yeah, it has weird flow, but overall, I really am excited about Iniko as an artist and want to see where they're gonna go. Staying in the category of body music, this new genre I'm inventing, we have eusexua, which is a word that was invented by FKA Twigs in order to describe essentially a very similar experience to what Iniko is describing, of being sort of beyond the boundaries of labels, beyond and experiencing this heightened sense of self through the body. But specifically, this one is about an emotional state called eusexua, which is literally like sex with yourself. Basically, it's a state where you are so basically the flow state, where you achieve such a sense of oneness with yourself and what you're doing that it's better than sex. And so there's a lot of different, multi-layered meanings to it that you can read into it, but that is the one that she provided, FKA Twigs herself. And so the opening song, Eusexua, is super memorable. It's got this great hook. It's like a deep trance dance song, very 90s feeling, but with modern production. And then it slams into Girl Feels Good, which is a banger fucking track. You go from that into more of like a pop, low tempo, very fashion forward song, Perfect Stranger. The music video is awesome. It's got all these cameos. If you pay attention to like artists who are also known for their fashion and their looks, then you'll get a lot out of following FKA Twigs' videos. Drums of Death is another fucking hard song. That one I don't even think has like much of a vocal presence. It's mostly just them drums of death hitting you. I do remember actually what the hook sounds like, but it's not the main appeal of the song. And so that first stretch of like 4 or 5 songs is particularly just like knocking it out of the fucking park. After that point, as the album gets more emotional, I feel like when you actually know the story of what FKA Twigs is going through that inspires what she's saying on this album, it feels like it should be way darker than it is. And like it goes to these touching emotional places that have made me legitimately like feel emotional, but it doesn't get to that like the level of gut wrenching of like the actuality. And I get that it's meant to be a self-empowerment album. Like she's trying to not dwell, she's trying to push through and go to the next stage and exhibit forgiveness. And I definitely think there's something very beautiful in like the level of forgiveness she's displaying on this when you really know the context. But I do feel like that would maybe hit even harder in the music if there was a little bit more depth given to the actual darkness behind what she's recovering from. But do I think that would make it a better album? Not necessarily. It's just that, again, it does get really emotional, but it kind of led me into my thoughts more than it did into my feelings when listening to these songs, because I'm thinking about what she's really talking about, because it's not like coded into the lyrics directly. But nonetheless, there are still some really good songs in the later half of this album, including the best song on the album, Striptease. Striptease is an all-time classic. The music video is phenomenal. That was the one that kind of set my expectations too high for the rest of the album, I think. Like, Striptease and Eusexua are my definite favorites. And while I do really like, Girl Feels Good and Drums of Death and Perfect Stranger, and I also like Childlike Things, which is the one that features Northwest, Ye's daughter, rapping in Japanese about how much she loves God, or Jesus-sama, which is interesting, very much interesting to say the least. But it's a addictive song. It will definitely get stuck in your head. It's fun. It's it's multicultural in a way that I think would make some people upset, but I cannot be mad at FKA Twigs and Northwest. I just cannot. So yeah, Childlike Things is fun, but Striptease is the GOAT song from this album for sure. And then next up we've got one of my favorite rappers of all time put out one of my favorite albums, perhaps my favorite album that he's ever put out, maybe? I don't know. It's going to take some time because I've been sitting with Earl Sweatshirt for quite a while, and I didn't really realize that Earl was one of my favorite rappers until this year when I put together a list of my favorite rap albums and realized that practically all of his stuff was on there, and that's not really true for a lot of people. Like I like all the Death Grips albums. I like all the Kendrick Lamar albums. I'm sure there's a few other artists who I like all of their albums. I can't even say I like all the Kendrick Lamar albums because that's me doing what journalists do and excluding his first like 6 mixtapes or whatever. But which are actually, they're fine. Like, I'm not even gonna knock those mixtapes. They're fine. So sure, I like all Kendrick's music. I don't know. There's plenty of artists where I kind of like all their music, but Earl is the only guy who like has 5 installments in my favorite albums list. And it's really a case of that I've grown up alongside him. Like, he is younger than me by a few years. I'm almost exactly the same age as Tyler the Creator. And Earl was basically Tyler's selected little brother, you know, like as described on Chum. Like, he told the story himself. And Hive is one of my favorite songs ever, period. Him and Vince Staples just absolutely did it to the most degree it had ever been done on that song. So that kind of made me a fan forever. And he was just kind of always in the same headspace as me of being like really dissociative and kind of out of it and on the other side of the room from the party and not really interested in the lights and the sounds. You know, I don't like shit, I don't go outside is exactly where I was at when that album came out. And then when some rap songs came out, initially it did not hit with me that way. And it was kind of too dark and too emotional for me in that moment. But then I actually caught up to the album when my cousin killed himself through self-immolation, and that was the album I like kind of just happened to be listening to when I learned that, and it hit a whole different way in the light of that. So yeah, I think every Earl album is a classic in its own way. You really got to be in the right headspace for it, and Live, Laugh, Love is really more so the headspace I try to maintain. Like, this, like, on the other side of irony, this is very much in the category of what in a pretentious alliterative sense would be described as the new sincerity. And that's like something, I don't know if it was literally coined by David Foster Wallace, who then like killed himself, so kind of like ruined the whole like movement of, kind of put a dark cloud over the whole movement of being like sincere and honest with your feelings, and that being like a nice thing. But it really came back into the conversation during the whole brony movement and during that like era of music as well. There was just a lot more of like this party atmosphere of like everything's gonna be okay, like, you know, just kind of this attitude of, we have done the irony thing and we're tired of it and we're ready to start being sincere again. And I think it's slowly spread through culture and gotten more and more relevant. And like even something like Brat is like on the verge of that post irony, where like the album is about being irony poisoned, but it's also about being like self-aware, being sick of that. You know, like being sick of yourself being ironic. That's kind of where I think we're at culturally, is like we can't help ourselves but to be ironic because the world is so full of ironies. But at the same time, it's exhausting. And at some point, you just want to be straightforward and you don't want to have to play all these games, you know? And so on this album, you have someone who is by nature a complicated thinker, a complicated lyricist, somebody who, you know, likes to play with language and likes to play with the idea of meaning. Like, a lot of Earl's lyrics are just meaningless, but they're meaningless in an evocative way. Like, they're not referencing anything specific, but they put an image in your mind. And on this album, there is a lot more specificity. There is a lot more direct engagement. There's a lot more of this sense that, like, you're coming forward and you're doing the thing on purpose and intentionally, and not just because it's how you make money or how you get your emotions out. You know, like, it is like a deliberate act to put goodness into the world. The very first song, GSW versus SAC, like it ends with basically this comedian kind of like roasting you for sitting on your ass, but in a very encouraging way. Like it's not mean spirited. The album is it's kind of mocking you for not, getting up and getting at it, but not in that usual aggressive hip hop way. It's in a very laid back, funny, like, hey, I get it, but let's move, like let's get something going, and so it's in a great headspace for me. Even I would even say this album is still like a little too dissociative and laid back for how I usually feel, which is why it's not as high up on this list as some of the other stuff. Like this is still kind of like, I wouldn't call it gloomy, but it's definitely in more of a pulled back headspace than what I try to stay in to keep myself like afloat. But it is a good pick me up. Like if you're trying to pull yourself up from like, hey, I need to, hey, things might be tough and there's a lot I'm still trying to unpack, but I gotta be there, especially for having a kid, which is where this album's perspective is Earl has a kid. I don't have a kid, so I don't connect with it on that level, but I appreciate that, like as a fan of him, seeing that he has something that's giving him this like profound sense of purpose and meaning, and like that is bringing out of him not only the best music he's done, but the best performances. Like his Camp Flognar performance that he posted on his channel was legitimately great, and I don't remember ever seeing an Earl performance that I felt that way about. Like, and it was like immediate. It was that sense of immediate magnetism of like, oh, he's about to do it, and then he did it. You're like, damn. So yeah, the whole album is great. It's another similar to Gollywog in the sense that it's harder to pull individual songs out. Obviously, Tourmaline is the hit. Everybody knows it. It's the standout single. But I'm about to ruin that song for you for at least a little while, because I listened to it so much that I could not help noticing the loud ass fucking cough that plays on like every fourth that is obnoxious as shit once you keyed into it. And it's like, why is half the song a cough in it? But again, it is that there's that irony inserted in, right? Of like, yeah, but I'm also listening to it when I smoke weed a lot of the time, so I'm coughing over it too. Like, I'm part of the obnoxiousness, but like, yeah, it's an incredibly dreamy and surreal song, but I feel like the cough keeps you from totally getting lost in it. It's like it's probably there to wake you back up and make sure you're not totally, phasing out into it, which it's not even the most associative song on the album, but it is easily the most like imagery of a swing, in a field comes into my head, just peaceful, serene, solitary niceness, maybe with your baby, like being on the swing with your newborn baby, and just like in that moment with just the two of you facing the whole world, like what Cole Krishna describes as when he heard whatever fucking Kendrick album for the first time. I'm getting off in the weeds. Live Laugh Love is great. Infatuation, Gamma, Well Done, Static, Crisco, Exhaust, all fantastic. There is a lot of popular rap music that is not going to be talked about in this video, not because I don't know about it, but because I didn't love it as much as other people do. I already mentioned like West Side Gun, I listened to all those albums. I think they're good. It's just he's not my favorite. He doesn't talk about things that resonate with me for the most part. Same goes for the rest of the Griselda crew, and I love Stove God Cooks' voice to death. He is my favorite part of every song he's on from that camp, but I still feel like he's not talking about anything that resonates with me personally. YouTube Music really tried to play me that Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist album over and over again, especially listening to Earl, because it, for whatever reason, it associates them heavily. I guess the Alchemist and Earl, it associates heavily. I don't want to hear it, and I would skip it every time, and it didn't matter. It kept trying to play me that album, and it's not even that I think it's a bad album. It's just I don't want to hear Freddie Gibbs. He has nothing to say that interests me. So I listened to a tremendous number of hip-hop albums, and I will give shout-outs to some specific stuff, but I want to set all that groundwork because I'm about to talk about a pair of albums from a legendary artist that I know plenty of people listen to, but those people are not the YouTube cultural gatekeepers of hip hop, because I have not heard none of those motherfuckers talk about the new Bun B albums at all. And I think that they are some of the best hip hop albums this year. Again, I listened to everything. And yeah, my tastes are obviously a little bit eclectic, but this is the most accessible stuff almost on this entire list. Waymo Trill, the deluxe version, because it's got a couple more songs. It was released like a month later. I assume it was just like, hey, we got a couple more. Let's throw them on there. And then Trill Static 5. I think, yeah, Trill Static 5, which is the 5th collaboration of all Static Selecta beats and Bun B with a ton of guest features. There's a ton of guest features on both albums, and they're both just fucking solid. Like, if you like old school style hip hop, if you like 90s style hip hop, like, they keep that vibe but make it sound modern. All the beats are good, all the hooks are good, all the verses sound good. Bun B's not always necessarily saying something all that interesting, but he is coming from like a mature perspective as a dude in his 50s who owns a real business. You know, he has a restaurant called Trill Burger. He's Mr. Trill Burger, and his music just feels good. This is my favorite kitchen music. I spend a lot of time in the kitchen because I do the dishes and I cook food. So I listen to music when I do those things. And there's certain albums that, you know, you can listen to some songs and then other ones are kind of like, all right, this isn't really what I want to hear, like when I'm just doing the dishes. You know, like, I'm not trying to get emotional. I'm not trying to, you know, get bored. I don't want to hear the same thing over and over again either. Like, there's got to be a good amount of variety, but also like an uplifting vibe, you know, kept through it. And that's exactly what I get out of these albums. Waymo Trill in particular, the opening track just starts off so immediately, immaculately vibey, and then it's like a feel-good song. It goes into a Memphis song. All the features are killer, by the way. It's like 8 Ball and MJG on the first song, and then Project Pat and Juicy J on the second song. So all of the Memphis legends basically in a row on the first 2 songs, which is funny because, you know, it's a Houston album ultimately, but he's involving, you know, everybody from the South basically on these albums. Better Believe It is like intergenerational, where it's him and then like a younger dude who's also on the come up. Killer verses, killer vibes once again. It's in the same kind of energy space as the De La Soul album, and while I would say that the production is not as immaculate as on that, this album again is a better kitchen album because it's not like musical theater half the time, you know, and it doesn't dive into all these different subject matters that I'm not really interested in hearing. Like, I'm trying to hear cooking music, and that's exactly what you get on this album. I Can't Lie, Down in the South, Be About Some Bread, Y'all Ain't Right, and Put You on Game. All of those I wrote down as great songs. They all just have super memorable hooks, great fucking beats. Corey Moe killed it on every hook on this album. And Bun B is always delightful to listen to, and all the features are good. And then you go over to Trill Static, and once again, Static Selecta just, I mean, I think Bun B is like an amazing album organizer. I can tell because both of these albums, they kick in with a similar kind of vibe, and it's exactly the vibe I try to start my albums with. Like, I don't always succeed at that, but like, whatever song has the closest to the vibe of something like this, that's what's going at the front, you know? So I love the way he opens his albums. They get me hyped. They get me ready to cook. Trill Static 5 like just came out, so I haven't like picked out the individual songs from it yet. But it's probably almost just as good as Waymo Trill. My only problem with Trill Static 5 is how much Bun B relies on bro to end his rhymes with. It's a word I have some history with, so, you know. Now, while I'm on the subject of music that I just enjoy like listening to as an experience, this one I'm a little bit more contentious on, but I'm going to bring them up because they also are not in the conversation, and I don't expect them to be. I do not expect anybody to talk about God Hand USA except for me, because I am the target audience for God Hand USA, which is to say a white rap fan who just likes to hear really dank beats and great flows and nonsense lyrics sometimes, like just a slurry of hip hop sounding iconography that has no connection to reality whatsoever, coming out of like a chipmunked anime voice. And it only works because the beats are immaculate. Every God Hand beat is like a truly, like, I want that beat. Like every God Hand beat I hear, I'm like, yeah, I would use that beat. And I I would say that, like, they're not rapping anything that is better than anything I would have done on the beat myself, but it's not obnoxious necessarily. And I think some people disagree because they'll hate the voice. They use like this 8-bit effect on the voice, so it literally sounds like chipmunked. I know a lot of people cannot stand that shit. I just like the way it resonates. Like, I think it sounds interesting and kind of good, and it sounds good with their flows, which are very much like fake Memphis. Trying to they had the reason I found out about them is because Project Pat featured on one of their songs, and it was like the best Project Pat feature all year. There was a couple of really good Project Pat features and a whole bunch of trash ones, but like not because of him, just the songs were trash that he was on. But like the God Hand song was solid, so I checked them out, and they put out a fuckload of music this year, and there was just a bunch of songs that individually are fun. Yeah Ho, Hop Off the Porch, Cali Gold, Smoke the Weed is easily the one I listen to the most because I put it at the start of my weed playlist, which is just songs about weed that are fun to listen to while smoking weed. It is the roll up song, it's the getting ready song basically. It's short, it's to the point, it's hilarious. Smoke the weed is just a funny fucking phrase. I smoke the weed. Like, it sounds like something that someone who doesn't smoke would say, but in such a over the top, obvious, ironic way that I really appreciate it. How You Ain't Got No Gun is just addicting. How you ain't got no gun? How you ain't got no gun? How you ain't got no gun? Pockets Full of Indigenous Immigrant. That's the song where they actually get really real, and like explain why hip hop in a sense. Like, so one of the members of this duo, like they call themselves like Mondo and Gondo or something like that in the bars. One of them is an artist, I guess formerly known as Lil Darky, who has been very controversial. I was not ever a fan of Lil Darky because on name alone, I went, that seems kind of racist. And I can't tell if this person is black because they use an animated character all the time. And God Hand, also the two characters like have their faces blocked out, but you can at least tell one of them is not white and the other one is. And the one who is not white is Lil Darky, but he actually explains where he's like, what is his background, what is he about on this song, and gets really real. And so this was the one that kind of legitimized it as hip hop to me, where I was like, okay, this isn't just a joke. Like, this isn't just like a meme and making fun of like rap. This is just like an experimental fun thing that these guys are doing, but they also get kind of real about it sometimes. And some of the songs get surprisingly political, particularly some of the stuff on like their mixtape, which is Ignorance is Bliss. That's the one, which has songs What It Is Ho, Chill TF Out, Chicken in the Crock Pot, and 777 Hand of God FM, which is like a 10-minute concept song about a radio show going between different songs. And like, I think it's pretty clever. It's fun. It's very like, it takes me back to the early days of like art hop, of like when people were deconstructing hip hop and having fun with it, and like not necessarily making fun of it, but making fun of the political stuff that kind of underpins the problems with the genre. They have 1-800 I Wanna Die, New Metal, and also from God Hand Volume 2, Riding in the Whip Part 2, Put It All to Rest, The Devil's Foot, and Stomp 'Em Out. All of those are fun songs. None of them are incredible. None of them would get them placement higher on this list. But I think I'm the only person who's ever going to shout out Godhead USA, so I just want y'all to know I had fun listening to Smoke the Weed over and How You Ain't Got No Gun over and over and over again this year. While I'm talking about stuff that sounds like Memphis and Project Pat, I should also like note that Juicy J released 2 really solid albums this year. Head on Swivel, which is more like traditional Memphis style trap, and then also he has a way more interesting album, although maybe not as eminently listenable to like rap fans. Caught up in this illusion is like a jazz, like a smooth jazz, like lounge album essentially, that was organized by Juicy J, and he appears on it in a few places doing like some singing, some rapping here and there. And the songs that he raps on are the most memorable to me on the album. I mean, I think it's a cool vibe. It's definitely made to be a getting up in the morning, album for somebody who likes listening to this type of chill jazz and also wants like to have one that has themselves in it. There's a whole song about the AM that is easily the most memorable to me, but the best song on the album is the one featuring Black Thought called Please Stop the Violence in Hip Hop. And that one's just a phenomenal god tier, message song, incredibly well done. So yeah, Caught Up in This Illusion, I think, is, even if I don't see myself returning to it as many times, the more interesting album. Whereas Head on Swivel is like a big collection of fun songs, and Juicy J is in an interesting space where he's another older guy who's kind of like giving life advice and like really in the process right now of realizing how traumatic what he's been going through really was, like most of 3-6 Mafia is dead now, so like he's in this state of being like, holy shit, like I really have to be in control of myself in my life or else like I'm gone like all my friends. And when he gets really emotional in some of his recent albums, he also had a really strong album last year that I think I liked even more than either of the ones this year. He's been putting out good albums year after year, so it's worth looking into Juicy J, especially if you like the sound of his voice, the Memphis sound. My favorite one on Head on Swivel is the one featuring Denzel Curry, who is really like the reason I got into Memphis stuff. Even though he's from Florida, like he was so adamantly like doing the style of 3-6 Mafia that he ended up working with Juicy, and so I kind of got put onto that. I also got off that album Undeserved, A Lot, Moonwalkin', Stay Up Out of Minds, Bankroll for My Kids, and SO to the M. None of those songs do I honestly like remember on such a level that I could tell you how they go, but Achieve It is one of my favorite songs of the year. So that one alone, gets this put into the conversation up here. All right. Next on my list, I've got Star-Crossed Lover by Dreamer Isioma. I caught on to Dreamer Isioma 2 years ago because she had an album which I didn't mostly love, but it had a song called Fuck the World that I ran into the ground. It was like my favorite song of that year. 2023 wasn't as crazy for me as 2024 and 25 have been for music, but she managed to crack through again with another song that was hugely stuck in my head. It easily gets stuck in my head all the time. Did You Ever Care? It's a salty, salty song. It's got a psychedelic, dreamy pop vibe. The whole album is very mercurial in its genre. It kind of goes between this stuff like this that's in that funky pop psychedelia realm, and then stuff that's a little bit more like hard rock and aggressive, and then stuff that's just like even syrupier and dreamier. It's truly all over the place, but staying in this kind of psychedelic realm. I noted here Kicking Cops, Dead End, Born to Live, Find Some Space, I Am Going Through Hell, Smoking Death, and Dizzy as favorite songs from the album. But this is another one where I see myself listening to the songs that I really like from it like well into the future, but only in certain headspaces, because it is a very salty album. It is very, very like salty lesbian energy, and like I try to stay away from anything that's going to make me start like feeling bad about my relationships if I'm not already feeling bad about them. Like it's one thing if I'm in like a salty headspace to come listen to some salty music. Did You Ever Care is like, it hits with me in the sense that it's an emotion I feel sometimes, but it's not like, oh, this is where I was at when the song came out. It's just a fucking good song, But There's definitely other songs on the album that they are good, but they are not on that level where it's going to hit me even when I'm not feeling that way. So I haven't played this as much as some of the others, but I do think it is overall a strong project that deserves more attention for sure, because I haven't seen almost anybody talk about it. Now, as I get to further in here, I'm still talking about albums, but I need to be clear that not every album I'm talking about is because I love the entire album. I'm also going to talk about singles. And some of these albums had like one of my favorite singles and a couple of good songs, and then I could totally pass on the rest of it, and that's fine because I still listen to those individual songs more than any other albums. Like there's plenty of whole albums that I listened to, and like say Joey Badass or whatever, like his album was okay. It was mid. Nothing in it stood out as something I would ever want to hear again. I think the very first song is like the best one, and I remember hearing it like a second or third time and being like, okay, that song's all right. But I've never sought it out to go listen to it. I have done that with songs from some of these albums. So regardlessly if I don't think the whole thing is good, that's not really the way I judge musical projects. It's more like I'm grouping these songs together because they happen to be on these albums. But, and I'm likely to go put on the album and just skip to the 4 or 5 songs I like and, then put on something else. So starting in that category is JID's new album, God Does Like Ugly. And this was a case where I had pretty high hopes for this because The Forever Story was really good, and that was an album that came out at a time where I didn't really have time for it, so I didn't catch on to it till a couple years later, and even then, it's so deep and dense that it took a long time for me to fully appreciate everything that's going on. I don't even think I have fully appreciated everything going on in that album yet. I have not studied it like I have a Kendrick album, but it is kind of at that level of like, there's so much going on that you can study it and keep finding new meaning in it while also just listening to really good music. And I don't think it's necessarily front to back all the way gold, but it has a ton of amazing songs on it. So going into God Does Like Ugly, I was really hoping I'm going to be hearing something that's as good as the highs that I heard on The Forever Story. And I don't think it ever gets there on that like emotional level. And JID has even said like that wasn't the point of this album. He wasn't trying to be deep. He was trying to be straightforward and just talk about exactly what he's thinking and feeling and just make some good songs, And when I pare it down to the songs that really hit with me, they are perennial, like timeless songs. Like the songs that are good, they will be good forever. They are some of the best songs he's ever made. It's just that they didn't have that immediate, emotional storytelling quality that made me go, oh my God, like on Cody Blue or something, or Crack Sandwich from his last album. But Community is like a statement song that stays with you because it has words that lay heavy in your mind. The way he talks about them apartments, like I live next to them apartments. Like I think about it when I hear the song and I hear the gunshots and I think about them apartments, and like, Malice saying my ghetto's not your culture is a line that people are going to be quoting forever. The whole verse is going to be stuff people are quoting forever. So, my favorites other than Communities, G's and VCRs are both songs that, like, again, they didn't hit with me that hard at first, but when they come on the shuffle, I'm like, what was this? Oh, it's that JID album. Oh, right. On McAfee also is kind of like that. But there's one song on this album that we all know is the one, and that's Skate. Skate goes all the way back and forth across the planet. Incredible. Maybe the song of the year. I definitely think if you put it up to a vote of people who knew, like if you had a vote and you had to have heard all the songs before you could vote in that vote, it's hard to imagine Skate not at least placing in the top 3. I have it in this. I have a playlist that's called Anytime Music. That's for songs that like no matter what situation or how many times I've heard it, I always get excited to hear it again. And Skate is on that playlist. It's so well constructed. The beat is hype. Every verse is fire. And it really feels like this incredible build-up to Ciara just going, "You ain't never been to Skate Town," which is like a really funny sentiment to have so much power behind it. But like when you just imagine skating to the song. You don't even have to be skating to this song. Just imagine skating to this song, and you're gonna have a great time. Just imagine the speed, the precision, the dodging people, going full speed, taking off, skating your ass off, dancing your ass off, break dancing on the fucking skate floor. Because Ciara pops off so hard at the end of this song. It's perfect. I got lost. I dissociated into another world there for a second. Yeah, that is probably the best song of the year. It's that or Always the Horse, Never the Jockey. Like, Always the Horse, Never the Jockey definitely made me cry more. But I don't think I could listen to it 100,000 times like I could listen to Skate. I mentioned earlier that there wasn't as much for me at the start of the year. I had the FKA Twigs album was pretty early in the year, but I actually didn't end up listening to it a whole lot right at the start of the year because I got more into it later. But outside of Doechii singles, there was also Ruby by Jenny. And this was, as a full project, a disappointment for me because I'm like almost certain that Doechii just like wrote a few songs from this album. Obviously Extra L, the one that features her, but it is a real fun song. You know, I listened to it like a billion times when it came out. Very pop though. It's the kind of song that is fun in the moment, but the second something came out that that was, you know, more meaningful, I totally forgot about it and only remembered it existed when I was like going back through to look for stuff to talk about in this podcast. But there was also a couple of other songs that hit pretty hard, namely Jenny, the title track, if you will, of the album, which in every way sounds like a Doechii song. If you know Doechii's catalog, that is a Doechii song that has Jenny singing it. And then also Mantra, This That Pretty Girl Mantra, is a different type of Doechii song because Doechii has a few specialties. And these are Doechii songs, but they're really good. They're as good as Doechii songs, you know. So Mantra, Jenny, and Extra L are three really solid Doechii songs on this album. By this K-pop star. She's a former member of Blackpink. They kind of brought in the whole craze of the hip-hop K-pop fusion. And so, you know, she's good at doing it. It's just that it's not really the core of the album. Like, it's not a hip-hop album. It's a pop album. And it is whatever type of pop it wants to be. I'm sure every song had a different songwriter except for the three that Doechii wrote, you know, but there's Handlebars is good, Love Hangover is really catchy, cute little like chilled back, beachy, kind of picnicky like pop song that I think could sneakily find its way into your life if you let it. And Seal City I also noted as being good. But yeah, most of it's very skippable. Like the songs I don't like on this album, I have no interest in. So ultimately I didn't spend a lot of time with the whole album compared to what I did with the singles. But they were there for me early in the year when there wasn't much happening and I was just listening to Doechii and the Doechii sounding Jenny songs. Thankfully, as the year went on, my taste for hard as nails female MCs was satiated with stuff like Gangsta Baby doing Reality Check. And I found out about Gangsta Baby because of her features on Head on Swivel, which are some of the best parts of that album, the Juicy J album. And so I was like, I gotta check her out. And her song on this, Bad News, kind of eclipsed the rest of it for me. Like, this is a solid album. This is a very solid, just like tough chick rap album that I enjoy front to back. But it's one of those cases where the songs are kind of samey. You know, she's talking about a lot of the same stuff. There's not like a tremendous variety in like the sound palette. So it's kind of a case of like the best song stands out as the best song, and that's Bad News. Bad News is so much fun. It almost would have been in my top singles of the year list. Like, I had it in there initially, but it just is a little bit too tiring to hear over and over and over again like that. But I have other playlists that are called like Fun Nonsense and like just solid songs from 2025. This would fall somewhere between those two. It is both of those things. So it's like if I were to go beyond the top 30 singles, this would be like number 31 is Bad News by Gangsta Baby. I thoroughly enjoyed that song. And again, the rest of the album is good. Don't Give a Fuck, Cutthroat, All Y'all, Reality Check, Pay For It, Just Venting, Call My Uber, and Mama Told You. I noted all of those as good songs from this album. But yeah, Bad News is like unbelievable. It is so stuck in my head that is going to be what I remember Gangsta Baby for. And she had a couple of fun little singles too. One of them about being a skinny itty bitty titty bitch and how they do it better. So if you're a skinny mini girl, she's got the anthems for you in specific. All right, pushing out of hip-hop for just a moment, because obviously I listened to more hip-hop than anything else this year, but I have space in my heart for some rock acts, especially for some good old stuff from my childhood. We talked about the Mars Volta already. Around that time, when I was deep into the Mars Volta, what ended up becoming like my favorite band from that period other than Mars Volta is Coheed and Cambria. I was a die-hard Coheed and Cambria fan off of their first 4 albums. Their 5th album is okay. The stuff after that has been really spotty for me. They have not put out one album where I loved the entire thing since their 4th album. That was the last one where, like, their first 4 pretty much front to back. The 3rd one has some skips, but pretty much front to back, love the first 4 albums. Everything after that is like, if I'm in the right mood, certain songs. There's a couple that are just the Unholy Creatures Part 1 or whatever. I did not like anything on that album. Not one single song. I've tried it like 5 times. I cannot make it to a song on that album. I just don't like the way it sounds. So when Coheed puts out songs I like, I really get excited. And on their last album, they had a song called Comatose that may be my favorite Coheed and Cambria song until this year. Coheed and Cambria put out what newly may be my favorite song they've ever made, which is Searching for Tomorrow. And that song carried rock music this year. That song carried anime OP vibes this year harder than any anime OP. And there were some great anime OPs. You know, I could give shout out to Creepy Nuts for bringing fucking like the Jersey club sound to Japan and creating some of the fucking dopest OPs for Don to Don. But yeah, like there were good anime OPs this year. There was one song that should have been one, because when I listened to Searching for Tomorrow, I imagined like hordes of ninjas rushing into battle. They actually had an animated music video for it. It's pretty fun. They just keep getting killed over and over again in like different scenarios. But yeah, Searching for Tomorrow goes unbelievably hard. It is the most tightly written, perfectly constructed, just like exhibition of the Coheed and Cambria sound at like full force. Like here's Claudio basically showing you, hey, here's what I can do as a songwriter. I can write a perfect rock song, you know, top to bottom, front to back, perfect rock song. Fun for all ages, infinite, like you can listen to it for the rest of time and it's always going to make sense. It is like it's rock music in its final form, crystallized, you know, by somebody who's been studying it since birth, basically. So Searching for Tomorrow is a perfect song. Other than that, the album is extremely experimental. Like this album, that song basically exists to let you know, hey, I can write a perfect song and now I'm going to do a bunch of shit that's just like what I want to do, you know? And some of it's interesting. Blindside Sunny I enjoyed. Play the Poet I enjoyed. Both weird songs. One Last Miracle is like more standard, but it's fine. And then towards the end of the album, you have this series of tracks called The Continuum, which is something Coheed used to do all the time, I guess they've done it a lot, like of having a bunch of numbered tracks at the end of the album that are like a little sub album that usually gets more like proggy and experimental, and that's the case here as well. Continuum 1 and Continuum 3 I thought were really strong songs. Continuum 3 straight up sounds like this one song from fucking Warframe that Bird listens to all the time. Some people are gonna know what I'm talking about and make this connection, and I will find that gratifying, but I'm not gonna explain any further than that. So yeah, this was like a solid album. Like, I didn't love all of it. There are some definite skips on it, but like, I was surprised how much I enjoyed this album, considering how much I have not enjoyed the last like 5 Coheed albums for the most part. Again, they had a few songs here and there that I love. Comatose, one of my favorite songs ever. But Searching for Tomorrow is even better. So as long as Coheed keeps making like one truly god tier song per album, I think I'll be okay. Now, I've still got a few more albums I'm going to talk about, but there are certain singles that were so good, I feel like I need to highlight them a little earlier in the video. I know we're already pretty deep in, but Crack It 15 by Maxo Cream. I listened to this song more than probably any of the albums that I'm going to talk about from this point on in the video. This is the song that starts off my best singles of the year playlist. It is definitely top 3. You know, if it pretty much goes, I think, Skate followed by Always the Horse, Never the Jockey, and then Crack It 15. That would be my top 3 tracks of the year, probably. But Crack It 15 is just so immediate. It's so bouncy, raw, fun, gritty, but sounds great. The production's by Tyler, the Creator, and I already talked about how much I loved his whole album this year, his dance album. It's my favorite Tyler, the Creator album, if I'm being honest, because even though Tyler dives into all of these emotions on his albums, and a lot of people have, really highly regarded his last few albums in particular for having these deeper emotional moments, really, from my perspective, his albums have kind of always done a thing where they start off really hype and fun, and then they gradually become more and more emotional and like sad. Like, typically his albums are sad. And this album, while it does have that starting off intense and then kind of, getting mellower as it goes, it doesn't get sad. If anything, it gets happier. I mean, the last song is tinged with sadness, and there is still an undercurrent of sadness in the lyrics, but it's not in the sounds. It's not in the way that the music feels. It's an uplifting album. It's a fun dance album all the way through. And even like when I think about what was previously my favorite album from him was Call Me If You Get Lost, and that album similarly was, I think, uplifting all the way through, but it did get a lot dreamier in its back half, and I just didn't find the later songs on that album to be nearly as memorable as the later songs on Don't Tap the Glass. I've totally gone down a Tyler hole, but it's because, like, I want to emphasize that I have always really loved his hype songs. Like, the songs that start off his albums, the ones that are like just kick you in the teeth bangers, and all the production he did on Earl's albums. Like, the best songs on Doris are the ones that Tyler produced, just full stop. So, and the best music videos have always been the ones that he made. So like, when Tyler just makes a banger song with an awesome video, that has always been something I love from him. And the fact that Crack It 15, I didn't think the music video was that impressive for this song, but the song itself is just god tier. Like, perfect beat, perfect vibes. It's really everything I personally would want from a hip-hop song, and the fact that the nostalgic references are also things from my childhood. The fact that he's referencing Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh! And GoldenEye, Nintendo 64, and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, it hits with me in that way as well. So I just adore this song. Another song that I really loved this year is Dick Eater by Baby Mother. I already mentioned Baby Mother being one of my favorites, and her album from last year hit a little bit harder with me than her album this year, aside from the song Dick Eater being just incredible. And if you don't eat dick, it's not going to hit with you the same way. If you do, and you are an unapologetic dick eater, this is your new anthem. It's a song I needed in my life. It's a song I needed to exist. The beat is just phenomenal. Her flow is phenomenal. It's Baby Mother doing her thing at the highest level that she does it. And I really love that song. The album has some other good songs. Sheesh Battle, which had been a single last year, so I already had considered it like a 2024 song in my mind because it came out like way before this album. But really good song. It has this beat that keeps slowing down and speeding up, and it's very experimental. That's what other thing I love about Baby Mother is she uses like really weird beats, and the consistency is that she usually has pretty much the same flow or the same few flows that she uses, so she's always recognizable even though the beats she chooses are like all over the spectrum. And typically if I don't like one of her songs, it's also because of the beat. Like it's just a beat that didn't hit with me. So like it tends to be like real hit or miss for me. Like on this album, I liked Are You Sure, Sheesh Battle, Problematic, and The Blackest Bunny. But you know, the rest of the album I could kind of take or leave. I really love Baby Mother as an artist, though. Like, I love what she raps about, her perspective. I love the way that she presents her artistry. She's a great Blue Sky follow. She's always posting, like, the stuff that she's crocheted. Like, she'll crochet a whole outfit that she wears on stage, you know. She's very anime-inspired. She is, in fact, a mom, and she, like, uses sound bites of her like talking to her kids and stuff in the albums, so she's like really wholesome, and wholesome in a hip-hop way, you know, like not even as wholesome as De La Soul in terms of being like this is something that normal people would consider family friendly. I think that Baby Mother's music is the kind of stuff that like resonates with me because I also have parents who are like that, you know. So it's wholesome for me, but I don't know if it would be wholesome for everybody. Another song I have to shout out because I listen to it more than most albums is Nosebleeds by Doechii. And I mentioned earlier that Doechii had a couple of like features early this year. She had a West Side Gun feature that was pretty good. She had the songs that I think she wrote for Jenny, and then she had one single because she won a Grammy early in the year. Best Rap Album, I believe. She was the third woman who ever won Best Rap Album, and you know, made that the centerpiece of her speech and just gave this beautiful Grammy speech. But everybody talked about the speech. Not as many people talked about the fact that like an hour later she put up this song where she's bragging about winning the, like, this is the real speech, like the Doechii speech that, you know, like the voice in my head version. Like what she did on stage was the responsible adult artist with a great career version of the speech, and the Nosebleeds is the end zone dance, like here's my real thoughts on the matter. And the way the song presents it, it has like the hardest fucking crunchiest beat in the world. It's got these crazy clapping segments where she's literally doing acceptance speeches in the song, and like in this frenzied manic way she's implying that if she hadn't won she might have gone yay, you know, and like crashed out. She keeps referencing Ye's I guess we'll never know, you know, Grammy acceptance moment. And so if you don't know that, look it up. Basically presents this song like, you all prevented a massive catastrophe by giving me this award, and now I'm going to like let you know how lucky you are that you chose me by making this awesome banger for you. So yeah, I love this song. Again, it's on my top singles of the year list, so I've listened to it a billion times, even though it's like the only thing, I think it's the only like non-feature that Doechii put out this year. And I'm not blaming her at all for that because she had a massive tour. I follow Doechii on Instagram. I follow DJ Miss Milan. I follow her designer, you know, the fashion guy. I don't remember his name, but the guy who tours around with her and helps her with her outfits and everything. So, you know, I'm deeply embedded in the Doechii universe, and I don't need her to put out songs all the time for me to be engaged. Now, before I go into more specific albums, I want to talk about the entire Nas Legend Has It series as a conceptual whole. The De La Soul album I already talked about being like one of my favorite albums of all time, so that was a huge win coming out of this, and Nas has a great verse on there. Every feature verse that Nas put out this year was absolutely goated. And I think his feature on the Raekwon album may have even come out last year, because I remember even last year being like, damn, every Nas feature is incredible. Like, he had featured on Ghostface's album last year, which I liked his album last year more than his album this year. The one this year got a lot more publicity, Supreme Clientele 2, because its name is a reference to one of Ghostface's most beloved albums. And I think that was a mistake, because it made everyone talk about it in such a way of just saying, well, it's not as good as the old one. And like, there was no reason to invoke that on the album. It would have just been taken as like, hey, this is a fun, straightforward Ghostface Killah album. Whereas his last one, Set the Tone, had been way more experimental and gone in a lot of different directions. And that album is way too long, and I don't like half of it, but the half I do like, I really, really like. And with this album, Supreme Clientele 2, all of it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, this is good, but nothing stood out to me as like, oh, this is a song I'm going to keep coming back to, because it has a very specific, vibe. And even as an album, like, some of his albums are interesting because they're so different. The Bad Bad Not Good album, or the 13 Reasons to Die album, or whatever the hell it's called, 13 Ways to Die. I don't remember the name of the fucking album. So yeah, it just felt like a kind of generic, Ghostface Killah album, which can be a good thing to have, but I don't know. For me, considering that Ghostface Killah's gay son also put out an album this year and went on a whole press tour about how Ghostface has basically ignored him and shunned him his whole life for being gay, it's kind of hard for me to like want to hear Ghostface right now. Like, I'm kind of looking at him like, damn, if this is not true, you should really be out here saying something. But like, this is a terrible look for Ghostface as a person, that he won't accept his gay son, when we've all accepted him as a schizophrenic rapper. It's just a lot. And so, even still, like, Ghostface features on another one of my favorite songs from this year that was from a different artist called, I think, like, By Alexander or something like that, which was called The Decoupling of the Nuclear Family, which, like, based on that name, I was like, damn, well, that's what happened, right? Like, he abandoned his son. Like, he should be talking about that on this song. That's not at all what he talks about on this song. Ghostface's verse is easily the worst part of an otherwise like 10 out of 10 song, where he's presenting like a woman who's just like, I don't know, left her family and is on her own and is, lonely and dreaming of a man, and it's like, I don't know, this is kind of hack compared to Rhapsody, has this like real fucking gritty verse on there. And the artist who starts off the song, who I don't know how to pronounce their name, but they did a couple of songs with By Alexander on a couple of their releases, has an incredible voice and does something really unique and interesting on the beginning of the song, which is my favorite part. It's just this freaky jazz explosion. And I think conceptually what they were trying to do with this song, by starting off in that place and then having it evolve into this dank and desolate like rap song, it's a really great concept. And I just think, again, Ghostface is the worst part of the song. It's not even that he's terrible, just that it's, knowing what I know about what's going on in his life, I want more from him right now than what I'm getting. So anyway, moving on from Ghostface, Raekwon's album I thought was just solid front to back. It's not necessarily my favorite in terms of like vibes and statements, like compared to De La Soul. Like, again, the type of messaging I'm looking for is a little bit different from what I get from some of the older like New York rappers and stuff. And part of that is also just not being myself, like from New York City, so I'm not connecting with a lot of the specificity of the stuff that they're talking about in these songs. But some of the songs from that Raekwon album, like when they come on shuffle, are just like, damn, this is fucking fire. Like I look at the phone, like, what was this from again? Oh yeah, the Raekwon album. That's the kind of vibe that it's got. So then you got Mobb Deep, and I have never listened to Mobb Deep before this album, so I didn't really know what to expect or what they were about. And I listened to a couple of their songs from the 90s, and it's one of those cases where I could immediately tell this is so influential that I've heard tons of stuff that sounds like it without having heard it. So, it didn't immediately feel like, oh, this is super original, as much as it felt like, oh yeah, this is what 90s hip hop is, like definitionally. But the new album, like that first beat is goated, like one of the best hip hop beats I've ever heard. Just flat out, the Mobb Deep Against the World beat, and that hook goes real hard, like it just sounds perfect. And there's a moment in Professor Sky's review of this album where he just said Mobb Deep's kind of a vibe, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the feel of the album. Is like, this is the vibiest gangsta rap, like this is the least aggressive, like in your face, the most like chilled out and like not worried about it, like unconcerned gangsta rap. And part of it is also that it's like funereal, like half of the group is gone, so there's this aspect of emptiness and like lots of open space in the album and places where it just feels like mourning. And this is an album I think that would hit harder with me like when I'm a bit older and drearier and have lost more friends, and like have more of that sense of mourning behind my movement. And even though, like I said, the De La Soul album also has that sense of mourning, it really takes a different direction where it's more about keeping the memory alive, in the case of Mobb Deep, it feels more like Mobb Deep as a concept is being put to rest. De La Soul has more of the energy of like, this thing still continues, in spite of the loss. Like, we will find a way. And I don't know if they're necessarily going to make more De La Soul albums, but the energy of the album is about the idea that like the group conceptually continues, whereas like they're not broken up, whereas Mobb Deep, it's like, I don't know how you can get any more out of it than what there is. So, it was time to kind of put it to rest, it feels like. And this is an album that's kind of nostalgic, but while still feeling new enough that it's not like just wallowing in nostalgia. It's about the old days. It's not from the old days. And that's why I kind of just avoided the Big L album, because Big L's been dead for like some time, and I know these are not like new rhymes he wrote, in the last 5 years before, like with Dave from De La Soul, they did not die that long ago. So like conceptually, these rhymes were just probably vaulted in the last decade or so. And there's, in the last song on the De La Soul album, Dave is talking about Obama being president and how he's never going to make it onto a bill. So somewhere between 2008 and 2016, that song was written. In the case of the Big L album, like, again, I have never really listened to Big L, so I would hate for this to be my first exposure to him, And when I have tried to go and listen to his stuff from the 90s, it's got a lot of homophobia, and like, I'm down to listen in an investigative sense to stuff from the 90s that has some homophobia in it, because I understand that times were different and that not always do they really mean what they're saying, but a lot of the time it's really giving insecure about the gay stuff that you have done. And I just can't with the fake, the fake homophobic shit. Like, that stuff really fucks with me. Like, I can't deal with it. And there are rappers from back then who were not being openly homophobic, so it's not like nobody knew better, so when I listen to a lot of these rappers who have been around since the 90s, and they're trying to find ways to not be homophobic, I appreciate it. When Run the Jewels came out with fuckboy as their new replacement word for the F slur, I was like, perfect. This is what we do now. You call people fuckboys. Or, with Kendrick, he's found a way to non-transphobically accuse men of being women when they're not trying to be. Like, hey, you don't seem like you want to be a woman, but I'm telling you that you are. So you might as well change your gender right now, because I'm telling you you don't act like a man. That's Kendrick's tack. So that I can deal with. But when I go back to the 90s and I hear lots of F slur going around, I'm just like, I don't need this. I don't need this stuck in my head. And I'm not saying that that's on this Big L album, but again, I haven't listened to him enough to want this to be how I engage with his content as a guy who's, it's not a group where there's other guys that are putting new stuff into it. So then, of course, you've got Nas's album, Light Years, with DJ Premier. And this album I found really interesting and educational, and it's like the type of album I can see listening to maybe a few times a year, but definitely not something that I would want to run into the ground because it would get tiring quick. And it's actually because it's so specific. And that's what I like about it. It's like a double-edged sword, right? Like, it's so specific that most of these songs have no like purpose to be listened to as like a driving song or a workout song or anything like that. They are songs about hip hop. It's an album you listen to when you want to think about hip hop. It's a thinking album. It's a collection of stories about hip hop history, about the idea of legends still having it and still being able to remember everything and to bring it all back and and keep it alive, and also still innovate, come out with new ways of marketing, new ways of collecting things. How do we deal with the fact that some of the members of our group are dead? How do we deal with the fact that we popularized having multiple producers on one album, but also people want us to do a collab where it's just me and DJ Premier and it's never happened? Like, how do we just deal with all of these ideas that like have kind of grown through the fact that hip hop has matured to this point? So in that sense, I really appreciate the album. I think it's a fun listen, and like there's probably songs that I would skip on repeat just because they're not as interesting as some of the other ones. But like, I love the stuff like the list of writers and the list of female MCs. Now, granted, when I listen to the list of female MCs, I think, Rico Nasty's not in here. What the fuck, like, so inevitably, the length of the list makes the exclusions ring louder, like even just as a fan. And I know he says, even if I didn't list you, I still love you. And like, I want to think probably he's just listing people he's met. Like, maybe he's never met Rico Nasty and he's met all the other women he talked about. I have no idea. But, it's giving like he exhausted everything he could think of and put it all in. And it's like, okay, as a song, that is both conceptually interesting and also conceptually frustrating at the same time. So, like, again, I think of it more like a museum piece. Like, this is an album that explains its own existence more so than it is an album that you just, like, listen to because you want to, like, hear some dope rap, which it didn't have to be. Like, it didn't have to be that, because guess what? Nas put out 6 albums this decade already. So, like, there was no need for him to just make a casual great Nas album. It's more interesting that he did what he did, especially as the capstone to this series. I also want to talk about the fact that Redman put out Muddy Waters 2. I don't know if it was right at the end of last year or at the start of this year, but I didn't hear it till this year. And I had initially thought that it was a part of all that, just because it fits in so well. Like, the Redman album right next to the Raekwon album, right next to the Ghostface album, it just makes sense. And so I don't know if, like, Redman was aware of this series, it was totally coincidental, but the fact that he got out a Muddy Waters 2 before there was a Supreme Clientele 2 and all this stuff, I mean, maybe even he helped lay the groundwork for them doing that. I don't know, but it feels like it's very much in line with those albums, and it is also really good, really solid stuff where, like, I find it kind of again, not messaging wise like strong enough to my core that I want to hear like a whole album of it, but when it comes on shuffle, I'm always excited. It's that same kind of energy with the Raekwon album. So moving out of Legend Has It, because I had to talk about that before I get to Cardi B. Am I the Drama? This album is like 25 fucking songs or something like that, and it's every type of song that Cardi B could conceptually do is on this album. It very much feels like every single song that she had made in the last like however long since her last album, which was forever ago. So she's had a lot of time to collect songs, and boy has she done so. And some of those songs, like some of the ones that are like WAP is like a 4-year old hit or something like that, and great fucking song. And if I'm being honest, I kind of missed its moment. Like I wasn't really like tapped in at the time that that was happening. So hearing it like on this album, I was like, damn, this beat is fucking hard. Like this beat rules. And you know, I noted songs that I liked from this album. I got Pick It Up, Bodega Baddie, Outside, Every Time, Nice Guy, Up, and Don't Do Too Much. That's a lot of songs. You know, that's a decent number of songs. And there was one song on this album, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I don't remember if it's one of the ones I just said, but one of the beats on here I sped up and used for my song Sweet Wavy Bee. So if you've watched the music video Trial of the Golden Witch, Sweet Wavy Bee, that's one of the beats off this Cardi album that I really liked and just was like, I want to slay that beat. You know, I need that beat. And it's not that Cardi was like not good on it or anything, but I just, you know, I was like, I want to go all the way with that one. So some of the beats on here are like definitely just so good that it's hard to fuck up putting anything on it, you know. And like there are certain bars on this album that make me go, all right, that's funny, and then other bars that make me go, what? What did you say? So it's a mixed bag, but it has high points. It's got songs that definitely, if you hear that shit in the car, you're going to start driving quickly. I also want to talk about the new Wale album. And Wale is someone who I had never really listened to, and I partially blame that on Anthony Fantano because back in the like mid 2010s, that's where I was getting a lot of my hip hop recommendations from, was because he would review like every major hip hop release. And usually, if he gave something at least a 6, I was probably going to like it more than he did. I think he had a tendency to like underrate some of the really solid hip hop albums, but he was like brutal to Wale. Like he hated Wale. He was always giving like really bad scores to his albums. So I had just kind of assumed that he like really sucked. And when Everything Is a Lot came out, I was hearing a lot of praise for it, hearing people say it's like his best yet. Particularly Read My Soul, I got a shout out for the fact that he was pushing this album hard. And yeah, it's real solid. Like all the way through, it's interesting, it's emotional, it's got like really great use of samples, and it's another case where like even though I think the messaging is overall like intriguing, it doesn't speak to me as much because the kind of relationship drama that the album's dealing with, I've just never dealt with, you know. So to me, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I guess that's what it's like for some people type feel. But Mirror on a Benz is the standout song. Just absolute earworm, great sound, just a song that you can imagine almost anybody enjoying, you know, like put it on anywhere and it's going to get somebody dancing. So yeah, I really appreciated Mirror on a Benz. I also like Power and Problems, YSF, Tomorrow Today, and Corner Bottles. Corner Bottles is like, I haven't gotten dirge drunk lately, so you know, like, and also I have a partner, you know, like I feel like it's a very single like dirge drinking type song, so like I relate to it, and I think because I've been there, and I think it is really really good, but I don't want to hear that song when I'm like not fucked up and lonely. So it's a bit of a tear in your beer hip hop album, but it is really good at that. Now, I know I've put a lot of emphasis on messaging and all that, but I do sometimes like for there to just be throw and go albums. I kind of put Bun B at the champion of that for this year for me, where, particularly if I'm going to go do the dishes or make some food, I could throw on one of those albums and it just feels good regardlessly of what he's talking about. There's a few other albums that are also on those lines, even if it didn't hit with me quite as personally. Flip Phone Shorty by ASAP Ferg. The song POLO is one of the best singles of the year, and it kind of came after a little bit of a drought period where like the summer had all these fucking amazing albums and singles come out all at once, and then early fall there was like maybe a month or a month and a half where I kind of wore everything out. Like I got to the end of being into 2025 music, and for like a brief breather I was listening to older stuff, and like really deep diving some artists. I'll probably talk about some of them in a bit. This is actually when I really caught up on Bun B, like listened to all the Trill Statics and stuff like that because I liked his new stuff. And so I started catching up on some older releases, and then POLO came out, and it was like, oh, thank God, music is still happening. Like we're still on, guys. Like there's still good singles happening, and the Strictly for the Streets album, I think it's called Flip Phone Shorty. I think the full title is Flip Phone Shorty Strictly for the Streets. And it's got Ball is fun, Fisher Price is hilarious, Uptown Baby is hilarious. The album is overall really funny. It's like the goofiest version of club songs. It feels like that one Future song where he was making baby noises on his album last year. It feels like ASAP Ferg heard that and went, hold my beer. He's got a little B feature on this album that's amazing. Like, it's just a really funny and fun album. I feel like I would love to hear this with someone else who would catch the vibe on it. Like it's in the context I've played it in, when other people heard it, they were like, what the fuck are you listening to? But I have enjoyed it. I don't think it's as throw and go excellence as Bun B's album, so I haven't listened to it as many times, but it's a solid one. I'm also going to shout out the album I Bet by Lola Brooke. It's a short and sweet, fun, bouncy, just like smack you in the face rap album. I haven't listened to it that much yet. It's fairly new, but I liked 4 songs on it. What's Up With It being my favorite, Get Money, Excuse Me, and Pain. And while we're talking about women MCs who had albums that I enjoyed, Ken the Man had an album that I overall enjoyed. I can't remember the specific songs, but there was a bunch of stuff that was fun on there that's just like good stuff to throw into playlists. Pluto and YK Nice, they had that Wim Whammy song early in the year. That was a ton of fun. Their album was overall like pretty fun. Hit or miss, but more hits than misses for me. And then they both had like their own albums, a bunch of features, so they were fun to follow. An MC who I did not know about, A-Witch. She put out an album called Okinawan Woman, which features ASAP Ferg as well, and also the RZA. It's like a Wu-Tang affiliation album, and just really solid old school boom bap, 90s style hip hop from the perspective of an Okinawan woman, which I have not ever heard of another rapper from Okinawa, so I was very interested, and she's rapping in English, so this was another one where it wasn't like necessarily that every song is like a great song, just that it's a lot of good rapping all the way through. Butcher Shop is really fun and memorable at the front of the album. Wax On, Wax Off, Hold It Down, and Ghosts of the East. I actually highlighted Ghosts of the East as my favorite because it's the most like emotional, the most like getting into her personal life and stuff that's happened to her, and hip hop, the most hip hop song on the album, even if like Butcher Shop is probably the more memorable one. That Boldy James and Nicholas Craven album, Criminally Attached, that's another one where I've only heard it like a few times, and there's certain songs that I kind of get sick of the beat and I just skip over it, but the songs that I do like, I mean, he's just flowing and rhyming incredibly. It's just like that highly technical rap that's fun to listen to. Walnut Grove, Infrared.com, Fully Smack, Mr. Quaker Oats, and Thread the Needle I had as great songs from that album. And I have to note that like when it comes to this extremely technical like New York rap, this is competing in my mind with all of that stuff from Griselda, and also with like Ransom, that album he did with DJ Premier this year. And like that one was also solid. I just enjoyed this one a little bit more, but a lot of the time with that kind of rap, it really comes down to the beat selection for me. Like there are certain beats that I can listen to for 4 whole minutes of a guy just doing, rhymes and flows. And then there's some where like it's so repetitive that after 30 seconds or so, I'm like, all right, I get this song's not going anywhere. Like I know he's gonna say a bunch of great rhymes and shit, but like I could just listen to the next song and also hear a bunch of great rhymes and shit, and just a better beat. So that's kind of how I felt with this album. Is like certain songs, I'm like, okay, that one's gonna stay in playlist, but like I couldn't listen to this whole thing over and over again any more so than any of those other guys I just named. Another album I definitely could not listen to in full, but which I will take some songs from, Playboi Carti, I Am Music. I'm not a Playboi Carti fan. I have not liked any of his music before this album, but this one has some the opening track, Pop Out, is fucking hilarious. It's so good. It is real vampire music. Once I caught on that he is like an actual vampire, it made it all a lot more fun for me, especially when he actually sounds like a vampire, like on this song. Crush is great. Charge Them Hoes a Fee is my favorite song on this album. It's my like guilty pleasure song of the year, but it's been quite empowering. It's actually been a song that I think about a lot because I have a problem of giving things away for free, of just like constantly giving away my time and my energy and really not asking for much in return. And so I do need to be reminded to charge them hoes a fee. And it's been kind of a mantra through certain times of when I'm thinking about giving it away for free, that I remember, no, charge them hoes a fee. It's a really fun song. The great hook. And Good Credit with Kendrick was also really fun. I enjoyed all of the like think pieces that got written about it. And We Need All the Vibes is also a really fun song. Shout out to Kiki, Kexke on YouTube, who like does full discography rundowns of rappers like every single night practically on Twitch. And she's been really insistent on We Need All the Vibes, and that's why I returned to that song and was like, you know what, it's like 30 fucking songs on this album, so the fact that I could pick out 5 that I like is like, that's why we're not talking about it higher up on the list, but those songs are fun. And with that, I think we pretty much made it out of the full albums that have like more than one song I really, really like on them. There's an album called 2000 In Search of the Endless Sky that I had really high expectations for this album because of the fact that the single Jetpack is god tier. Like as far as post-hardcore songs go, this is one of the best ever. It reminds me of like Stars by Hum, or oh god, I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole of naming post-hardcore bands none of you have heard of. It sounds like 90s revival post-hardcore music. And when I looked into the band, like their first album is very much like Deftones Worship. They toured with Deftones. They are a Deftones style band. And I think that their first album is like fine. It's fine and fun. They seem like they'd be really fun to see live playing those songs. And listening to 2000 In Search of the Endless Sky, it was like every song was like, yes, this is a good song, but none of it made me really feel anything because it felt a little too much like we're playing around with these toys that were left from, these older bands, and like we're trying to make like a new sounding post-hardcore song more so than just like playing something that would be like good and fun and cool. I don't know. It was a weird experience for me. Overall, I think it's a good album and other people will definitely like it more than I do. But particularly that single Jetpack, that shit is goated. That is heroin into my eyeballs. It's the song that in my playlist comes after Tweakin'. So like it's basically when you hit that like high point of party where there's nowhere left to go, Jetpack is where you go, off into the endless sky. I think Thundercat must have an album coming out soon. I don't think it's going to be out before this year is over, unless I missed something, but he's put out a few singles, and in particular, Children of the Baked Potato is a song, like, made for me. I don't know how many people will love this as much as I do, but it's got, like, these drums, like this double bass drum that sounds like something out of an Iron Maiden song or something, but it's mostly like a groovy jazz freaky bass line going over that, and these like erratic jazz piano chords. So it sounds like jazz, but like with such a thriving beat that it almost feels like heavy metal. And what the song is about is just like enjoying your own company and like being alone and being at home, and like, it's not that you're like lonely or depressed. Sometimes you like doing your own thing, and I super relate to that. And I think Thundercat and Remy Wolf are both some of the very best like melodic composers out there. So when I saw that Remy was on this song, I was very excited, and she kills. Like, both of their verses are super memorable, but hers is more like, his has the more memorable lyrics, hers has the more memorable melodies. And Remy Wolf put out a great album last year. She had some of my favorite singles last year, so if you never listened to her, you should check her out. But yeah, I love her on this song. I love the song altogether. It's super weird, it's super specific, but it's like, it's just for me. Now, here's a song that I think a lot of you probably missed out on, because I heard a lot about Skate. And rightfully so. Skate is like the song of the year. But Ciara had another really strong single called This Right Here that features Lotto. And I think this song has not gotten nearly enough attention because it is so much fun. The beat is just this like really uplifting, grabbing like party type thing, and the lyrics are basically about that the song is good. Like, it's a song about itself being a fun song, and it works because it is that fun. It's just so well written on the melodic end. Her performance is so good, so much energy in this song. Yeah, I love it. And Ciara had a whole album. I listened to it kind of. I skimmed a lot of it because a lot of it wasn't really my type of stuff. But this right here is super lit. This right here is pop my shit. This right here is, as the song goes. And also, there's a song on that album called Infinite Imagination that I thought is really fun as well. It's kind of catchy. It gets stuck in my head sometimes, at least the hook. It's very like whimsical and kind of Disney-esque. Like, it's totally different from anything else I heard this year compositionally. So I thought it was really interesting. I put it in my solid songs playlist, but it's it's more so like inspiring than necessarily something I'd want to listen to all the time. But I liked it. I think Ciara is doing great things this year. Definitely an underappreciated hero of the genre. Another heroic artist that doesn't get as much talk as maybe they should is an ancient band called Guided by Voices. They've been going for like 40 years, and they never stop putting out albums. In fact, they put out 2 albums this year, and they are solid. The way I would describe their music is it's like, it feels like the Beatles era, like rock and roll, but with a little bit more of that punk rock edge. But they are basically trying to figure out how to make like the most straightforward rock song every imaginable way. Like, every different possible combination of chords that could be turned into a cool little rock song, they're gonna find it, So each of their songs like simultaneously sounds familiar and new. It's always like right in that space of, well, I know I haven't heard this before, but at the same time, it is just like a traditional rock song by some definition, Interesting space that they operate in. But they had, the first album they put out this year had a song called Independent Animal that is my favorite one they put out. I basically, I listened to each of these albums once and was like, that was fine. But this particular song stood out to me as like, this is the one I'm getting out of this, And it's kind of a song about having nothing new to say, and just kind of being like an experiment in, like I said, making a straightforward rock song that just hits as quickly and uniquely as possible. The song's like a minute and a half, but even then, it's really only like 40 seconds. Like, there's a 40-second real song that is incredibly catchy and memorable, and then there's like a 40-second just play us off, And that 40 seconds is necessary for it to like be memorable and to work in a playlist. Like, the way it is in my playlist, it comes in and then then it leads into the Coheed and Cambria song, and it's a perfect lead in. But like, it's really a 40-second song, that has a neat little playoff ditty at the end. So I love it. I think it's just a perfect distillation of old school rock music surviving in the modern day. I'm also going to shout out the song Woes of the World from that Saba and No ID album. I know a lot of people really liked that one, and I found it like pleasant, but ultimately each song is just too long for me. And I think it's just that Saba doesn't have enough that's interesting to say without just dipping into the like lyrical miracle kind of bag that I don't think he's the best at. So a lot of the songs kind of got exhausting for me, and I would find myself skipping them like halfway in, even though I kind of liked it at the start. Woes of the World, though, has such a fucking good beat that I cannot get tired of it. Like, this beat is one of the top 10 of the year for sure, instantly stuck in my head forever, and the hook is really good. The just another woe of the world, like, I love that. The verses are like, again, it starts off really strong and then it kind of goes a little longer than it needs to, I think, but there's good stuff in there. It's just overall a really solid song. It was strong enough to make my main list of songs I really loved this year. And now I'm going to get into some stuff that, like, I liked this, but it wasn't like in rotation like that. It was more like, okay, that was cool and I'll listen to that a few times, but it didn't like stay in my mind that way. I had This Just In, which was Del the Funky Homo Sapien and a couple other rappers who I had never heard of, and so their names did not stay in my brain. Sorry, guys. I know one of you followed me on Blue Sky. Thank you for that. But yeah, this album was solid raps, just like some fun beats, some great raps from some, unique perspectives, very very much the kind of stuff I expect from a Del collaboration album, because that's most of what Del does, is like collaborates with all kinds of like obscure and abstract rappers. So I enjoyed it. I listened to it a few times. Fake Breaker and Breaking News are the really strong songs off of that one. And then similarly with Kool Keith. Kool Keith is a dude who does a lot of collaborations and he puts out albums constantly, and he's like the most OG rapper who still is like completely experimental and doing new shit all the time. He's like 67 years old and he's exactly as insane as Lil B. They have in fact worked together. If you've never heard of Kool Keith, he's a whole universe to dive into. He's got like a million personalities, and I had not really ever listened to him until this year. And I mentioned earlier that there was like a period where I started listening to older stuff, so I started really diving into his discography and listening to a lot of it. And like, there's some really solid stuff in there, some really fun like addicting songs individually. Like, everything he does is so fucking weird in particular that it's hard to enjoy an entire project usually, but there are certain songs that just like worm their way into my subconscious, like World Area from a few years ago, which I really like. But so he put out an album this year called Carpenters, with a K. I don't know why he wanted the his name is Kool Keith with two K's, so the KKK thing's a little weird, but I don't know, he's probably doing it to be mimetic or attention grabbing or funny. I don't know. Nobody paid attention to this. I'm the only person I know of who listened to this album, but it's good. The first song super hits, another one of my favorite beats from this year. The song DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. Of course, he would make a song dedicated to the DAW itself. It's good stuff, but it was not as good as some of the other Kool Keith stuff from recently. His stuff on that Czarface album from a couple years ago was like truly god tier. The new Frost Children album and the new Danny Brown album, I'm gonna talk about them kind of together, because I expected to love Stardust a lot more than I do, and I'm really happy that a lot of people do love it and it's getting a lot of attention, because ultimately, it's Danny Brown, who is one of my favorite rappers, one of the biggest influences on me, but also a rapper who I am much more in love with certain songs than I am with whole projects. I don't think there is one whole Danny project where I love the entire thing. Atrocity Exhibition's close, but all of them are more like there's 5 or 6 songs that I just think are fucking incredible, and the rest of it is like really good, but just not really for me. And I would say that's more or less the case on Stardust as well, but it also just doesn't feel like it is a Danny Brown album to me in a sense. And it's weird because narratively it's really strong. Like it is about him, his recovery, his, having been an addict, and like these changes in his life, and describing what things used to be like and how they are now. And like in that sense it is very powerful and emotional. And I feel like maybe I'll connect with it more when I am myself not like addicted to weed. But it, like, overall, the feeling of the album is like Danny Brown is featuring on all of these songs, and like he's telling his story in bits and pieces across all of these features. But like the songs themselves feel like the artists that made them, and almost every song is a different artist. I think there's one or two who have like repeats, but for the most part, it's a bunch of hyperpop producers, almost all of them transgender, who Danny Brown is a fan of, and who he mostly has collaborated with before and made singles with them before. And the vibe of these songs is very similar to the collaborations he had done with them before the albums, in part because not only are they all making the beats, but usually they feature vocally on the album. Like either they have a feature verse or they have the hook, and sometimes you're hearing more of the feature artist than you are of Danny in the songs. So, like, there is an extent to which it feels like Danny is deliberately trying to like lose himself in the album. Like he is trying to like kind of dissolve into this, and like what he's trying to put forth is like look at what I'm proud of as as an influence in the world. Like even though I did all these things that I feel bad about, like at the same time I've influenced this younger generation who makes this great music that I love. And so on some level he's like presenting to us, the children of his movement. And also he's just celebrating like trans people and hyperpop, which is really cool. As a trans person, I really appreciate it. Also though, as a trans person, I am exhausted with hyperpop. And I've never been the biggest hyperpop person. I'm obviously way deeper into hip hop, like old school style hip hop. And that's kind of what I would have, like what I would when I think Danny Brown, I think Really Doe, and I think When It Rain, and I think, like these songs that are closer to traditional hip hop that still have experimental elements, and particularly his flow is really crazy on these songs and stuff like that. But it's I want to hear Danny Brown just rap all the way through a song more than I want to hear these hyperpop songs that kind of feature Danny. And I love 100 gecs. I loved their last album. That's the only hyperpop album I can like. Both of the 100 gecs albums, and I didn't really love the first one. I loved certain songs on it, but like the second 100 gecs album is like the only hyperpop album I've really loved all the way through. And there are songs I love from Underscores. The opener on her album from last year, and the song Locals, Girls Like Us. Locals is like an all-time jam, like that's one that my husband loves as well. Like we can listen to it anytime. Absolutely goes off. So Underscores has songs that I love, but overall most of their songs are kind of really not my thing. And then Frost Children, like they all have songs that I like, but it's like a couple of them. Like I usually find Frost Children songs really annoying and grating. Like the way that they really go all in on the like emo vocals is just it's not for me. So their album had one song I liked, Dirty Girl. I thought that was fun. I thought it was cool. It didn't make my favorites of the year list because it's still like kind of too repetitive and it doesn't go all the way hard for me. Like, so I don't know. And like on Stardust, the first single was my favorite one, with that crazy beat from, I don't even know the producer. I had never heard of them before. So like most of the producers on here that I had heard of, like I thought their songs were okay. Fentanyl's another one where Fentanyl probably has like 8 or 9 songs I really, really like. I don't think she's put out a full album yet, but these just weren't my favorites. Like her stuff with Danny Brown has not been my favorite stuff from Fentanyl. Yeah, so overall it was like this album is like a bunch of solid songs, but nothing that for me was like, oh, I'm gonna listen to this ad infinitum. Like I'm super happy the album exists and that it's putting a spotlight on these people. And like I even found, like, I had never heard Isbroki before, and Isbroki's beats are like immaculate. I would love to feature on an Isbroki song sometime, but at the same time their music is very like youthful in a way that like I don't really want to listen to it. Like, and maybe that's part of the issue as well, is that I am myself in my mid 30s and I mostly listen to people older than me because I'm always looking for perspective I don't have yet. And it's clear that Danny is more in the headspace of like trying to listen to people younger and kind of like reclaim that youthful feeling and like hear something new and exciting. And I'm a little over it when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like it's been a while since I heard something that felt new enough that it was actually like shocking or like made me think, oh, this is like the new sound. If anything, this feels like the most polished form of 2 years ago's sound. But hyperpop to me is like that era is kind of pre Kendrick, like Kendrick's Super Bowl performance. Like it's we're in a different reality now when it comes to music. So I don't know. It lives up to its name of Stardust to me, but like not in a way that that makes it my favorite album. But I've sure talked about it a lot, haven't I? I have like a similar kind of feeling about the new Clipping, Dead Channel Sky, where like Clipping's one of my favorite groups, and even though there's not a Clipping album that I love front to back, all of them have some of my favorite songs on them. Mid City, classic. Fucking the Self-Titled's a classic. There Existed an Addiction to Blood is a classic. Fucking, I'm trying to remember the name of the one after that, but whichever one has Nothing Is Safe, classic song. So like all of their albums have amazing songs on them. So this one's no exception in the sense that like there are songs that are really interesting and memorable and unique, and I think they will grow on me over time. But there was nothing on here that immediately was like, oh, this is the fucking jam, and like in a year that was just stacked with great sounding stuff, like there was nothing on this album that scratched that Clipping itch quite like Crack at 15 did. That Tyler the Creator to me was like hitting it a little harder on that front. And it's easily the goofiest Clipping album, like the most silly concepts and goofy ass lyrics and funny stuff and stuff that like is just kind of corny on purpose. And like again, I think some of that stuff will grow on me. It's just not really the headspace I've been in. It's a bit of a clusterfuck of an album, and like I don't hate that about it. It's got lots of stuff that I think sounds good. And it's another one where when the songs come on shuffle, I'm usually like, oh yeah, this is kind of a jam, But like when you listen to the whole album, it all kind of blurs together into like just this exhaustion of like goofy cyberpunk ideas. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a little bit more playlist fodder than what I'm used to from Clipping. But at the same time, I have always kind of just listened to certain songs from them more so than listen to their albums all the way through again and again. So maybe I just haven't figured out which ones are my favorites yet from this. It is 24 fucking songs also on the deluxe. Foxy Shazam had an album early this year called Animality Orchestra or something like that. That was pretty decent. It was pretty fun. The first few songs were really interesting. It was another one where none of it was quite repeatable on that level where I would end up listening to it like over and over again, but I was, I really love a couple of Foxy Shazam albums. Like their second and third album are truly incredible. I love their first one too. It's fun. And they've had some like solid songs here and there across all of their albums. It's a little bit more of like it's fun to still hear this band like doing stuff that sounds cool and interesting, more so than that I was like really in love with the songs. Shouts out to Chloe the God, who had an album called I Feel Different Every Day. It's a short album, and like half of it were songs that were way too emotional for me to want to hear, really. And the other half were also that way, but like way too relatable, also. Like, Chloe the God had some lyrics on some songs that felt like dead ass bullseyes on me in a way that was like uncomfortable. Like, I don't need to be reminded. So yeah, really good music, really good music, just like literally too heavy for me. I want to shout out an album called Euphobia by Emma Ibarra, which has a very unique sound that I really enjoy. I think that she still will probably grow as a producer and make something that I'll like even more than this, but like I enjoyed listening to it, and certain songs are really good. Basically, she has this style of like chopping live guitar over 90s break beats and making like sort of emo breakbeat stuff, and it's just a really nice sound. I found her through like Instagram doom scrolling, basically, and it was like one of those things where she's like, "Hey, I've got an album. You probably won't click on it." And going by the stats, no, most people won't. But I thought it was solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to what else she might do. An album I feel like actually I probably could have talked about earlier in this video, Bruiser Wolf's Made by Dope. I really love the opening track, Tubi, especially. Like, that hook has been in my head constantly. Every time I think about Tubi, I think about that hook and that beat, because it's one of those heavenly beats. I guess I just haven't listened to this album enough times to fully internalize it and like remember the other songs besides Tubi, but like it is such a nice album. It just feels good. I love the beats all throughout. I don't remember the name of the producer, but it's another single producer project, and like with Bruiser Wolf so far, the previous albums I'd heard from him were like hit or miss on the beat front, and then also just like I can get real tired of his voice, and he tends to do the hook all over the song, like there tends to be a lot of hook. So with this album, I feel like there's still a little bit of like it can get grating here and there, but overall it was like a good time, and I really enjoyed it, and the features are mostly good. I think there was maybe a feature or two that I didn't like as much. I can't really remember. Again, I need to spend more time with Made by Dope by Bruiser Wolf, but I probably will. I could definitely see it's one of the easier ones to throw on around like other people who just want to chill and listen to like some some fun rap while we smoke weed. Like, it's very laid back. So this is not really like a project so much as an event, but transpiring throughout the year, Joey Badass, a rapper who I mostly know from features, from like his Denzel Curry feature, and I'm sure a couple others, but like I've always heard of him as being like this really great rapper, and he at the start of the year said there was too much West Coast dick licking, and he tried to start like a whole diss battle, and it was clear he was trying to start smoke with Kendrick, but he never got it. Kendrick didn't bite, because why the fuck would he? And instead a whole bunch of other people went to war, but particularly Daylight. And Daylight is another rapper who I had not really gotten into on that deep level, like in terms of listening to his music, but I have seen lots of clips of him talking and describing like industry stuff from the inside, and being like a ghostwriter and all this stuff, and like his bars are crazy. The stuff he says is some of the craziest writing in hip hop. So when in the summertime this battle suddenly heated up, and it was Joey and Daylight like going back and forth, and Ray Vaughn was in there, and a whole bunch of other guys. It was like 70 rappers or something got involved in this, and everybody's going back and forth. And at the very height of it, there was a point where Joey had Loaded Lux, who is like this like arch nemesis of Daylight as battle rappers, and he had Loaded Lux on a track, and Daylight starts rapping about how he's autistic and schizophrenic and has multiple personalities, and breaking down all of his traumas in his life, and basically like uses this rap battle as an excuse to do like a psychological deep dive on himself and like do some self-therapy, and then decides that he lost, and then just like fucks off. And it was the weirdest shit, but so much fun to witness. The ending of that battle was crazy. To me, that was the end. I know there were more shots fired and stuff, but that was the high point. That was the high watermark of the whole thing. And then, like, not too long after that, the Clips album came out, and it just washed all of that away. Like, the entire conversation about Joey and Daylight, the second that Clips album dropped, nobody gave a fuck about that anymore. I want to shout out, like, a few weeks ago, The Roots put out a live album. I haven't heard anybody mention this, but I gave it a listen, and God, it sounds immaculate. Like, this is one of the best sounding albums I've ever heard. The Roots are amazing, and if you just want to have like a crash course, if you wanted a crash course in the Roots, which I did, this album was a great, like, instant. Oh, I love these guys. Like, instantaneous. Aside from, I was already like a fan of Black Thought, but just hadn't really listened to the Roots like albums and like their music that way, and realizing I recognized some of their songs while listening to this. But it was just a great fucking time. I gotta plug my own music while I'm here. Trial of the Golden Witch. I put out a bunch of albums this year. A lot of my best music I've ever put out. Neverwinter Norfolk was how I started the year. In the middle, I did this really dreamy, like, sort of pop rap album called Comfort Woman EP. It's like a short. I also did a Weird Little EP, which was like experimental rap, and No Rest for the Psychedelic Night, and also Make No Appearance, both of them 7-track rap albums that were just like bar you down, here's the best stuff I've written so far this year type shit, released towards the end of the year. I'm pretty proud of all of it. There's some songs on there I really love, so please give those albums a listen. Another, like, more of an event in a way, or a series, is the Manic Mondays series. If you don't know, Del the Funky Homo Sapien, like, every single Monday presents a song. He's not always on the song, but it's always a song. I assume he does all the beats probably, and usually features, like, a small handful of like obscure rappers that I assume are all probably from the Bay Area, just friends of Del who can jump on a track, whoever he collects every week, and they make a new fun song every Monday. So if you really love weird, like, off the wall hip hop, I highly recommend investigating the Manic Monday series. It's been going for like years now, so there's a lot of songs. I gotta shout out the album Duel by Ginger. I don't listen to a lot of like heavy extreme metal music anymore. I did more so when I was a teenager, but I really favored the more like dissociative stuff, like Opeth and stuff like that. And Opeth is a huge influence on Ginger, and it definitely shows in some of their like moodier passages, but they stay a lot more locked into like the gritty pummeling, like, just death metal like type sound than Opeth does. They're a little bit more on the frenzied side. And so it's music that can get really exhausting to me, because rarely can I maintain this kind of like headspace for very long. Like, I'll hear a couple of songs and be like, yeah, that was fucking badass, and then like I don't need 80 minutes or however long, of like that exact sound. But there's a bunch of just really solid songs on the album. So like, whenever I sort out the one that's like my go-to, Ginger song, because they had like one from their previous album that was like Call Me a Symbol or something like that, and I was like, cool, that's my one, and so I haven't found that yet, but Duel is overall a really good album. I want to shout out Lotus by Little Sims. I like Little Sims, and I really liked Drop 7 last year. I like some of her older albums more, but I've only really heard them a few times, so I haven't like truly gotten into her on that level. But Lotus is really solid. It's a really good album. It's just that it's like it comes from a very bitter place, and like rightfully so. It's like a righteous anger album, but it's another one where the headspace is not really where I'm at, and I don't want to be in it. Like I don't want to start finding a target for feelings like this if I'm not experiencing them, is basically the way I would put it. And it's not that every song on the album is bitter like that. There are some like really fun, life-affirming things on there. But it's also like, it's kind of a mixed bag vibe in that way where like, if you come to it for the fun songs, you're going to end up getting hit by the sad songs, kind of like an old Tyler, the Creator album. So yeah, for me, it was like, I'm not in the right headspace for this album, but it is very good. Prof had some really solid singles throughout this year. I don't think he put out a full project, but he just had some fun songs and some really cool music videos like he always does. I want to shout out some of my friends who put out really great musical projects this year, particularly Blind Skywatcher and Shitty Kickflips, both of whom hang out in the Golden Butterflies Discord server and are good friends and also make amazing music. Blind Skywatcher pretty much puts out music in like every genre that doesn't exist. Like whatever genre you haven't thought of until you hear one of the songs, you'll be like, oh, this is a possibility for music too. But then also there's like just like singer-songwriter acoustic folk songs that she makes that are like just as powerful, if not even more so, than the experimental stuff. So yeah, you can get all kinds of unique experiences listening to Blind Skywatcher. And then Shitty Kickflips is the queen of trans punk rock from Minneapolis. She is absolutely doing it with the off-kilter, like blistering fuck my job punk rock of the modern day. I also want to shout out a band called Infinity Knives, or I don't know if it's like more than one dude, but it's usually like presented as a duo. But Infinity Knives makes the most like fuck the government, fuck the idea, fuck the, like we're gonna talk about political stuff and also just get real crazy with the music and the beats. It's like what JPEG Mafia used to be. When you thought JPEG Mafia was cool, that feeling comes back to you listening to Infinity Knives of being like, oh yeah, somebody can be like edgy and funny and it can work, and you don't have to be like a yay backer or whatever. So yeah, Infinity Knives is fun. I recommend checking that. Also from Baltimore, so really filling that JPEG Mafia space that's been left in certain people's hearts. Also, I had almost forgotten about Pup, the band Pup, punk rock band that put out a really solid album early this year. I've been a Pup fan, again, a band where like I like some of their songs a lot more than their full projects. Their song Anaphylaxis is like one of the greatest fucking punk rock songs ever written, I think, if you even can call it that. It's almost like a prog rock song, but it's just fucking really, really, really good. There was nothing as good as that on this album, but it had some really solid bangers. The one that's like fuck everyone on this planet except for you is like instant stuck in your head. It's another one where it's a little bit too much of a downer for me most of the time. Like the headspace that it's in is one that I try to kind of avoid being in. So even though I think it's really good, it's one where I think on a dimmer day I might be coming back to it. But it's not really the energy that reflects what I've been trying to have this year. So even though I think it's good and would recommend it, it wasn't necessarily for me. I think I've covered everything that I can remember from this year. I'm sure there's other stuff I enjoyed and that I would mention if I, was really trying to be granular and talk about everything, but this recording is almost 4 hours long. However long it's edited down to, it was almost 4 hours worth of recording, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. I really hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you'll check out my link tree and go to all of the different places that you can find me and the other altars in my system. I've been Nova. This is only the second video on my music channel because every video I do is extremely long and I am not really expecting much in terms of views. These are passion projects more than anything. It's information I want to exist in the world, and so that's why I do it, and I really hope that you enjoyed. If you want to support me somehow, do it through the links in the description. Go buy my music. Honestly, that's the best way literally the best way to support me. Just go buy my music. All right, thanks for listening. I'm Nova. Music forever.